All right, so welcome to today's situation podcast thingy, whatever we're doing here.
Yes, sir.
We have Stanley Ching, we have Giorgio Lambos, we have me, Nick, and
Wait, why didn't you give yourself? You don't have a last name?
no, it's secret. It's a secret. It's Nicholas Sadzakos, but yeah. Essentially, today we're going to be talking about Vagabond, everyone. Now, if you know me personally, you know I've recommended this to nearly everyone I know. On multiple occasions. In fact, I've terrorized people with recommendations. And that started because of Stanley.
Yes, sir.
See, one day I was very, coming into lockdown. This year, 2021, has been a rough year. And I remember telling Stanley, messaging him one day saying, Stanley, I'm so mad that I'm very mad. And then he's like, you should really read Vagabond. And I'm like, Stanley, listen to me. I mean, as far as animes and manga goes, manga, Chinese cartoons, as far as they go, I could never, I loved all the classics, like Gio, you showed me, Berserk, you showed me Evangelion, you showed me Cowboy Bebop.
Did I show you Berserk?
You did.
Yeah, damn right.
Stanley's like dad and mom of this group. He showed everyone everything.
I'm putting you on notice, man.
But, I loved all that kind of stuff. Devilman Crybaby is probably the newest thing that I've watched.
Oh, you watched it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't bad. It was really good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was really sick. I watched Code Geass. That was independent.
Okay.
Independent. No one told me about that. I found it myself. But I don't know. I never really got into the serial anime world or the manga world. Never have I ever read a manga before. Always consider this is me speaking out of pure ignorance, just to show you, just to elucidate my position to everyone. I characterize reading manga as weeb shit. I was I'm gonna be honest with you boys. It was complete weeb shit. I'm like, dude, if you're reading anime, nah.
If you're reading anime. I love reading anime. Mangoes.
So Stanley was like, bro, you should check out Vagabond. I'm like, Stanley, get the fuck away from me with your Chinese cartoons. I'm not fucking reading manga. Don't convert me. And then you're like, dude, just you sent me the link to the first page. You're like, you didn't even tell me to read the first chapter. You're like, just have a look at the first page. And I'm like, fine, okay, I will, right? And then it just fucking didn't stop. And then I'm like, I was successfully converted, man. I was fully just, I'm like, what the hell have I been missing out? What's wrong with me? My prejudices led me astray. And now Stanley
and now you terrorize people.
I terrorize people.
You attack
That's
people.
why I'm here. I was here because I was terrorized by both Nick and Stanley.
I remember there was a point where Giorgio was talking to Quentin, and then he gets a message from Nick. And then Giorgio was telling me or telling Quentin 100%, this is a message from Nick telling me to read Vagabond.
Yeah, I remember this day.
Do you remember this?
I was hanging out with, I think I was with Quentin in real life at the time.
Yeah.
And then I get a message from you, just random texts. And then it's
There's a picture.
Yeah, it was a picture. That's right.
What's Nick sending photos for? And then sorry, go on.
Yeah, and it's you're just sending me screenshots of Vagabond, text every day, read Vagabond. Because here's the thing, if there's one guy harassing me, I can resist. Yeah. So Stanley was the first one to harass me. He was like, bro, you gotta read Vagabond, it's the best. I'm like,
that's been happening for years.
And his thing is Nick wasn't a weeb. Now me, I'm a pipe hitting, pocky eating weeaboo. All right, bona fide, grew up in Evangelion.
I've never heard that adjective. That's why you're addicted to crack. What does that mean?
Listen, all right, when you go to
he watches Evangelion every night.
You go to enough anime conventions, all right, things get weird, all right. Go to the after parties, all right, things happen. I don't want to say too much about that. Not to the uninitiated. We're in a public space here. But look, there was no doubt I was gonna like it, but I'm doing a lot of different things, and I just never got around to it. That's all, to be honest with you. And Stanley's harassing me, and then Nick one day, Nick starts harassing me.
Yeah.
And then I realized these guys are coordinating their harassment with each other. Yeah. They got an advanced two-man plan to come at me from the Eastern Front, the Western Front.
It wasn't even coordinated. That was the funniest part. It was
just the will of Vagabond.
I think the most I genuinely believe that the most me and Stanley ever spoke about converting you was maybe a few messages being hey, we should get Gio to watch this or read this. And then Stan's yeah, I've been trying to for years. Oh, that's cool. I'm going to keep trying now. Sick. And then I think because when you were harassing me, Stanley, it came in the form of you should read Vagabond. And then immediately a link to read Vagabond online. I mean, no, we bought all the Vagabond.
Wait, scratch that.
It came in the mail.
Yeah, Stanley kept sending me Vagabond panels like printouts in the mail. And I'm like, fine, okay. And then that's what I started doing to you. I literally copy pasted Stanley's messages to me to you. I'm like, hey, and like you know what? I never went onto the site and did Control C, Control V. I just literally wrote www.readvagabondonline.com.
You talked
It was just part of it.
to
Like,
put more authentic magic in it. Oh, that's great.
but yeah, no, the successful
Yeah,
conversion.
needless to say, I also loved it. That's why I'm here talking to you fine people today.
Exactly. Also, so that's the arc of being converted because of Stanley. It's all Stanley's fault.
And you know why I recommended to you? Because of your situation. I thought it really mirrored one of the other characters, which I think he gets overlooked a lot. I think at the end,
Matahachi.
Matahachi.
You're saying that for a lot of people now. Come on.
He said the name. I just said character. I could be any character.
He baited him.
It could have been any character, man.
My
I could have been
situation.
Itusai, right? It could have been any character.
I was really hoping you said like, Jotaro or whatever.
But I thought there was just like, I could see connections, and I thought Matahachi and his attraction to Oko. I think that's
Otsu.
Otsu. There's Otsu and there's Oko.
Yeah.
And I just saw some resemblance, and to me, and I think this is the real strength of Vagabond. It appeals to the male audience quite a lot because it's samurais, it's fighting, it's got that that spirit, but really there's a much deeper message of self-exploration and self-development underneath it. And I thought that yes, you could appreciate how beautiful, and there are some gorgeous panels in the manga, but apart from that, it's honestly a really beautiful message about self-empowerment, and I thought that you could gain something from it.
Dude, I think, well, I mean, I tell the audience with extreme confidence, I definitely did gain something from it. So I thank you every day for showing me. I've actually gained so much from it. I have it tattooed on my leg.
Yeah,
Vagabond.
he's not kidding.
I also bought a katana. Which I cut my hands on by accident. but yeah, no, dude, I highly agree, dude. I think like if you're in a rough place in your life at the moment and you're not entirely too proud of yourself, out of just sheer honesty, just like not too proud of where you are, and then you pick this up and you take the time to really absorb the message, it could really teach you a lot of good things, man. I think Vagabond is like absolutely ridiculous in its breadth and its character development and like the underlying messages of so many different themes. It covers so many. It's not too long either, which is, for a manga, at least from what I know.
Well, I mean, if you compare it to One Piece or Naruto, yeah.
Yeah, or Berserk, same, roughly.
It's roughly the same.
I'd say 100 chapters shorter because Berserk's around 300 and something, and Vagabond got to 430 from memory.
Okay, so Vagabond is longer.
Yeah, I want to say it's about a little under 100 longer.
I guess it might be different based on how many pages per chapter, but regardless, they're roughly in the same ballpark, but they're not close to One Piece, or they're not close to Naruto.
That's true.
Just a quick shout out to I fucking always butcher his name. Take. Does anyone know how to say it properly?
Inoue.
Takehiko Inoue.
Oh, you said the last name first. That's
Inoue.
You take away my weed pipe now. All right? Edit this out. So I said Inoue first before Takehiko.
But yeah, no, I mean, if you're listening now and you don't even know what Vagabond is, I highly suggest you just look up some stuff on Google Images, and you'll just see like the artistry involved in actually, like, the manga itself is something like I've never seen before in my entire life. It was all hand drawn with brush, out of my understanding, and the panels actually in the actual, drawing it were a lot bigger.
Even the regular panels were brush. Really?
The regular panels. What do you mean? Like for
example, by the way, for the audience who can't see, I'm opening a page like this. I thought that was pen, and like things like this. Oh, I just flipped through it.
I'll describe it to the audience. It's like a naked anime lady.
This is clearly brush.
I think, man, I heard somewhere that it was done by brush because he really liked the way. I mean, I don't know, dude. I'm not an artist.
guess,
I
yeah,
won't be
I
able to
guess I
look
don't
at
know
things. This
either.
is just out of rumors that I've seen. I'm pretty sure someone out there who has read Vagabond knows a lot more than we do. Will probably be able to say in the comments section if you are so inclined, without yelling, you know, and disliking the video. But yeah, no, like the artistry is ridiculous. Like like the level of immersion through just like, I don't know, reading it, watching it, looking at it is ridiculous. Like you feel the movement in the drawings, which is something like you don't really get with like a lot of, you know, I don't know, comics maybe, you know, like there's movement to like the drawings, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. So Georgia, what did you think about it? Like, because, so you were being harassed by Nick, and I guess me to a lesser extent. But what did you think about the art and just the story and everything, like when you picked it up?
Oh, look, I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And I particularly, you know, I related it a lot to, because at the time I was reading it, I was really into, you know, I was really into meditation and exploring Buddhism. And I'd kind of just gotten into Zen. I was introduced to Buddhism through, you know, sort of like
Through me?
Can
I take credit for this?
You.
Stanley's invading.
It's more look, I'm not taking it. I'm taking the bait. Not taking it. I like more like Burmese adaptations of like Indian films, like, you know.
Sorry, Stanley, but
No, like, you know, like through Vipassana meditation and such. So I mean, you know, at the time I'd kind of like that was when I was exploring Zen more so. And, you know, Vagabond being a Japanese text. And, well, the Buddhism present in Vagabond is Zen Buddhism. I found it really great
Soto.
to be like, analogous to that. And even outside of that, just like, look, when you're a person who really has, I don't know, big dreams and a lot of goals, which I consider myself, you know, always in that what's it called, Sigma male grind set, you know, hustling with my music.
So here we are. I'm
making
Matahachi. Here we go.
You're gonna play that card.
It has some for everybody.
It does. Whatever your life arc is and your big thing, there's gonna be information for you. It's gonna be some reflection of your soul, which I definitely found, like, because you see through, you know Musashi's that kind of guy. Now I wasn't out there killing people in the streets when I was 17. I'm, you know, just some dude that makes sounds. Okay, all right, take it. That's all I'm saying. But like, you know, like there's a certain spirit in that which I found spoke to me really deeply. For me, the greatest part about it, or at least the part I most enjoyed, was like there's this psychological aspect to these characters, and just like seeing their psyches and seeing their philosophies evolve and get challenged by the world around them, and seeing these sort of characters sort of like, you know, sort of go through their story arcs and just transform in this world where there's like combat means far more than combat.
Yeah.
You know, when two characters cross blades in Vagabond, it's sort of their one philosophy versus another. And they each sort of learn about each other and learn about themselves through each other and the way the other guy fights. They sort of communicate through their swords.
They talk through the swords.
And there's a whole, we could totally get more into that with, like, we didn't talk about just like, we'll get into, what's his name? Into,
Sasaki.
yeah, Kojiro, Sasaki Kojiro, because he's like, he's the epitome of that, you know. He's sort of this blind mute. Deaf mute.
Deaf mute.
He's a deaf mute. You know, sort of like sword savant, and he's just this. He speaks through his sword, you know, and it's he sort of, in a lot of ways, he embodies the philosophy of Vagabond, even though he's not necessarily the main character.
More so than Musashi I think maybe that's not true, because I really respect the dedication to growth. And if we compare this Musashi, who's the main character, we sort of based off a real person. There was an actual Musashi around. This is a little fictionalized, but I see links between him and other characters, which we'll probably mention. I think we've already mentioned, but Berserk, like him and Griffith and Guts, I see some relation, especially Griffith, because there's this desire to improve. Now, you could say that he's a more human, maybe he's a more moral character than Griffith, but I think I find myself constantly being drawn to these characters. And I'll throw out a manga that I know you two haven't read, but it's actually quite popular as well.
Pokemon?
It's not Pokemon. It's called Goodnight Pun Pun.
Sorry.
But Goodnight Pun Pun. And like, I really enjoyed Goodnight Pun Pun. It's a story about like a depressed kid. Like, it's beautiful. The art is really beautiful. But I'm really drawn to these characters who like just have such a strong will, and as I read it, like that stands out to me. Like Musashi in many ways is just like a man of will.
Yeah.
And I respect it. I really respect it. And I really gravitate towards it. And like, I feel like you could get some inspiration or learn from it.
Dude, definitely. I think like to really pin down the attitude around the character development throughout Vagabond, like, you know, what I really enjoyed was just like each character had their own definitive flaws. Like it wasn't just like a very one-dimensional sort of story where it's just like, okay, he's one character and this is him being consistent throughout the whole thing, and you always expect, like, you know, him to prevail in the way that he always does. It's not like a shonen, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, and look, I haven't seen Dragon Ball Z in a fucking very long time, but it's not just like, oh yeah, when you think of like Goku Headspace, you know, it's a fairly consistent image throughout the full arc. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you bring that up, actually.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
People have said this is an anti-shonen. But
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, man. Yeah, you're right. It's like, sorry, we still.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say,
sorry,
you know,
cut you off.
the depth within every character really humanizes them to like a crazy extent, like where you genuinely become extremely attached to these as if they're actual people. And the one thing I just want to say, yeah, Musashi was just relating back to a older point, like Musashi was a real person. He's the author of the Book of Five Rings, and he was around in the Edo period in Japan, 1600s to 1700s, and essentially he was just like in the real world as far as story and myth goes, and just genuine history too, because he was a real person. He was like 60 to 0 in terms of like actual like jewels in the world. Like he was 60 to 0, and then in his later life he settled down as a philosopher, a Buddhist philosopher, and that's where he wrote the Book of Five Rings, illustrating his like specific style of swinging the sword.
He was also a poet.
And a poet and an artist. So
this guy is the Renaissance man.
Yeah, well, during the time of Renaissance as well. But like, yeah, he was a real person. Then in 19, I think early or halfway through the 20th century, there was a book called Musashi. I forget by who, and that was like a fictionalized story of Musashi, which the whole Vagabond manga is based off. So this is like 3 levels removed from the actual Musashi, but like an interesting illustration of how things would have went down. Sorry, Gio. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, on that note you were saying earlier of like how the sort of the flat shonen character, who sort of you know, comes in and steamrolls and dominates the competition. It's interesting because I think a lot of modern shonen has kind of like tried to change that, but this one has done it by even almost reversing the roles, where it's like you have that flat, excellent, moral, ideal, virtue character in
Kojiro?
In Kojiro, yeah. And he's not virtual. He's not virtuous ideal, but he's the ideal shonen protagonist. He loves the sword for its own sake. He's got this innocence of a child, yet the strength and brutality of the most powerful man in the world. He's essentially, you know, in a lot of ways, he's the Goku of the story.
He's a constant,
Yeah, and you know, our main character Musashi, he's more like Vegeta. So normally, where it's like, you know, a story like Dragon Ball, and I think a lot of these other mangas and, you know, these big shonens that are based on it, where the main character is, in a lot of ways, they have character growth that mostly relates to their physical strength, but their personalities are these paragons of virtue, and they sort of change the world around them.
Yeah,
like
right.
Goku being a flat character who shows the way to the people around him.
Yeah.
But instead, it's almost as if Musashi is a deeply flawed man. He's got the same the same will and drive you'd expect from your main character, but then you see all the failings that come at the cost of that. Even the failings of that very same will and drive.
Yeah, right.
Dare I compare him to like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, right? Vegeta trains harder and works harder than anyone else, but you know, he's obsessed with being better than he is.
Yeah,
but
right.
this is our main character, you know.
Yeah, it's I found that very interesting. Like in the first couple chapters of Vagabond, I found myself looking at Musashi and I'm like, fuck, don't ever change. Like, this is mad. Like, this is so cool. And then like you see his development and how there's like a genuine level of self-denial and like I say doubt as far as the narrative is concerned, but like self-denial as far as the character himself is involved. And like that's what leads to this like unraveling. Like the flaws are reconciled and like there's a continuous development even through the very end, like even in the final like sort of chapters. Well,
what is this self-denial that you're talking about?
Like the idea of like, on one hand, he wants to be like the strongest ever and he idealizes his strength and he's like, you know, he sees himself as like the strongest person there is, like his motivation to go to the fuck, I'm gonna butcher these names, guys, but like the Shiwa school. What the fuck?
Oh, the Yoshiyaka?
Yoshiyaka.
I think it's Yoshiyaka.
Yoshiyaka school in
I don't
Kyoto.
remember how to spell it.
Either way, like he goes there and he's like extremely arrogant, right? He goes there and he's just like, yeah, I can go straight to like the final boss, essentially, like the headmaster of the school, and fuck him up. And then when he goes to the Hozoin temple, he has the same sort of attitude where he meets his exact match, right? And in meeting his exact match, he does the worst thing he could possibly do to himself, and he's run away from a fight, which he doesn't even remember, right? And then like that triggers the arc of like the doubting of the self, and then that's where there's like a whole arc of extreme self, one of many, but like the first one that you genuinely see and you are a part of. As it's happening, it's like the introspection involved, and then there's like the realization that like, you know, I remember we spoke about this for one time in the car. It's just like Musashi's like God-given right of who he is, his strength and his power, like got him extremely far off the bat. But like that will only get you so far. Nothing got to do with the final product, the final end. But like he meets his exact match in terms of his natural given skill set with the Hozoin, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And then like it's through that he's forced to develop, right? It's not just like a face rolled constant. That's what I meant by like, you know, criticizing the classic shonen constant character.
Yeah, that's the first time he's really challenged.
That's
like,
the first time he's challenged.
Before that, he's able to beat every opponent through sheer like will and
exactly,
just having more balls than the other guy.
Exactly.
But like that's the first one. Was like, all right, you got to change your strategy because
this isn't
the
gonna
failure
work.
in your sort of like, I don't know, the limitations at least of, you know, who you naturally are. Is sort of
it's interesting because the limitations weren't even just like a oh, you just failed to become what you wanted to be. Like the limitation is literally death. Like, you know, he will die, and like that's like it gives that immediacy to the situation, you know, I found, you know.
And I think what really appealed to me was the fact that if you compare it to Dragon Ball Z, which we mentioned a few times, I don't think Goku or Naruto ever really changed their approach. They just get more powerful.
Yeah.
Like Goku never questions, should he be fighting or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference.
Dude,
Musashi,
I think, perfectly said.
A lot of his growth isn't just physical. And I think there's obviously physical growth, but it's more rewarding when it's been added along with spiritual growth. And he actually has to confront, and this is when I knew that the manga was serious. I remember I kept telling you, Nick, I said, you know, like the first 40, 50 chapters you really like, but I said once you hit around 70, like that's when it gets like really good. I'm not sure if you remember.
I remember exactly when you said that. I remember that, yeah.
And the reason I say that was because there was a scene when he runs away from the Spearmaster, who I've forgotten his name.
Inoue Hozoin.
There you go. He runs away from the Spearmaster, and then he turns up late. Oh, sorry. He turns up late to his match, but he finally proceeds, and then he gets asked the question of what do I do with your bones if you die? And then it wasn't a scene of like if it was in Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, like, you know, haha, like no way you'll beat me, you know, let me go Super Saiyan. He looks up at the sky and he realizes I might die, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And that sort of growth and that sort of like spiritual development, I just don't see it in many other places.
Yeah, dude, definitely 100%. It's, you know what I found that to be like, I really enjoyed how it linked to, like, as you were saying earlier, like the Soto Zen Buddhism. That's just such a recurring motif throughout the whole book. And it's like, oh, this could be a crude example, but like, you know, Musashi starts off as like all fully spec'd into strength and will, right? But then like zero spec'd into like any spiritual level, like Buddhism or whatever. Let's just say religious, not really religious.
They're scared of him.
Yeah.
And he relishes that fear.
Yeah.
He goes around like beating people and purposely trying to hurt people.
Yeah. He's a terrorist, social terrorist.
Yeah, he's a parasite.
Yeah, exactly. And then I really enjoyed how they tied in like the Buddhist thing, because it's something as well, something at the time I was trying to cultivate more in my life, given like the I don't know, just like some random bullshit that I went through, you know, just something I really wanted to cultivate at the time. And it's just like finding truth. And then with the introduction of Takuan, the monk, I found him like essential to Musashi's growth. But like,
great foil for him. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just like Buddhism being tied into such a way, it's like something that you can look at, and like along with something that's so contradictory to Buddhism, which is killing people. You know what I mean? And how that even like supports that to an extent.
Yeah.
Not like, you know, in a one-dimensional sense. It's like Buddhism supports the death of other people, but like, you know, the idea of how like, you know, having spec into the spiritual, you have the ability to bolster your life in any dimension you want because of the free-flowing and fluid nature of the practice. It was really cool how it tied that to the real world. You know, it's just like there's a real world element of just like genuine mindfulness and like, you know, of how life works. And the way it tied that into the series was amazing. It was something you could grab onto in the real world as well and feel as if you're contributing to the story or you're living the story internally through your own subjectivized.
Oh, dude,
sort of way.
totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It inspired me to actually go to Vipassana with you, like recently. Like that was
Yeah,
like
right on,
it was
man.
the biggest like thing because at the time I was reading Jung, we were reading Ion, and like we were all reading Ion, and then like I was like reading Vagabond. I'm like, dude, nah, I want to get into like Buddhism. And then and that's when I went to Vipassana. That's when I like fully committed. I'm like, bro, yeah, I want a
Chinese
spiritual.
cartoons, man.
Yeah, but that's fucked. Dude. Don't get into them. You have a life-changing experience. Like it's fucked up, but it'll be really good for you. But yeah, sorry.
By the way, just for the audience, if you don't know, Vipassana is this retreat where you go away and then you don't speak for 10 days. I guess the days vary, but the idea is you don't speak, you meditate a lot, you live quite a very simple life. And the idea is like you look inside. So yeah, I think a lot of people wouldn't understand that word.
Yeah,
There'll be a Vipassana episode coming up.
Yeah,
soon, right?
definitely. There will
So
be
if that's
one.
okay if I can spoil that for the...
Yeah, no, that's
cool,
fine.
cool,
That's
cool,
fine.
cool,
That's
cool.
fine. But
we
no,
doing that?
Vipassana is just a quick thing. It's basically Musashi's mountain arc before the Hozoin fight, where he's just like alone in the mountains, just like for months on end, where he's like not speaking, not talking to anyone. He's just in the mountains, just like letting nature itself sort of teach him, like. And that's like I found kind of like a very similar beauty. Like throughout later in the story, there's this big focus on like the limitation of words, you know, in Vagabond that I really enjoyed. I found analogous to real life. It's just like, what does it mean to be invincible? What does it mean to be like, for me, it was just like, what does it mean to be the most intelligent or something like that, you know, like, and it's just like, dude, these are just words. And like the frivolousness of just like characterizing life through words and how like that pales in comparison to action. And then that's where I was introduced to the gravity of the duality between Musashi and Kojiro, because Kojiro doesn't know words, hands down. Like there is such a minimal part of his existence and him actually being good at the sword, you know, whereas like every other samurai in the book would be like concerned with like, what school are you from, like you know, what style, what like fiefdom do you belong to, who are you, and like it's all focused around names and who you are and all this like sort of thing. But like how that compares to your actual agency behind being a good samurai. In Vagabond, you know, Kojiro trumps them all. He's deaf mute. He's water.
Deaf mute spec. He's running the spec.
Straight out.
Spec.
Yeah, look, that's a lot of great stuff there, lads. I wanted to say something on that note of like, I wanted to go back to that idea of Musashi running away from the fight with the Hozoin, with the spear warrior. I've also forgotten his name, sad to say.
Inoue Hozoin, I think his name, the spear warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure his name was Inoue Hozoin. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But, like, yeah.
Well, look, yeah, that moment for him, because it's like we said earlier, like, you know, Musashi seems to not effortlessly, but he seems to rely entirely on being a brute, committing to this sort of fearless, just like, I'm going to throw my life at it and I'm going to overcome the guy by just being ballsier, gutsier than him. Yeah. And that's the first time it doesn't work, and he experiences genuine fear because he runs away. And it's like, until that point, we understand it to be this fearless character who just doesn't give a damn about his life. And in that moment, he kind of realizes he does want to live, and he's confronted with his own weakness, or his own potential for weakness, when he entirely saw himself as strong, which I found interesting in the face of what you said earlier about two things. One, the sort of the failure of words, because he'd spent so much of his time reinforcing his ego. With his whole, like you said, I want to be the strongest under the heavens, or the strongest under the sun, however it's translated. Where he realizes, you know, that sort of, he doesn't necessarily give up on that quite yet, but it's the first time that's challenged.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing that you said, Nick, that I wanted to touch on there is that the Buddhist, you know, sort of like he's connecting the Buddhist ideals from this very like defiled place.
Yeah.
And people would be like, oh, how can you be a monk? How can you talk Buddhism? How can you talk this stuff? You're a Ronin. You go around killing people. You murder men with swords. But what's interesting is something I kind of read in Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, which is an
No,
absolute.
that's the unofficial canon for Vagabond.
Oh man, yeah, but you know what? Yeah, if you haven't read it, if you want to read Vagabond, read that alongside it. You're gonna be enlightened in 3 weeks. Promise you, that's a guaranteed financial advice.
You can read that.
Nah, you know what? I had to completely switch my stance on fucking Western philosophy recently, bro. Fuck it all.
It's too wordy, man.
It's
We're
too
not
wordy.
going to talk about Vagabond. We're going to talk about how Western philosophy is
No,
degenerate.
let's move on from Hegel. Let's go back to Vagabond.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was ready to start laying down, insulting some book nerds. All right, okay. But look, the thing that's cool in that Shunryu Suzuki talks about is this idea of, it's kind of contrary to something Alan Watts says, where he goes, how can you try and develop yourself when you're the thing that needs development?
Yeah.
While Shunryu Suzuki would say, no, don't worry about it. You're just slowly aligning yourself with the Buddha mind. It's like you can only get to the Buddha mind through your current, or the big mind, through your current small mind. Which
Can I just say also Daniel Ingram, that beautiful analogy where he's like, you are an operating system and you're working on yourself through your own operating system, trying to optimize yourself, which is a hard task to do.
Yeah, you're rewriting your own code, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's actually great that Musashi is someone who is becoming a profound Buddhist throughout the course of the story when he's living as a complete anti-Buddhist in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because that's so like, I guess, I think for a lot of people who are sort of like who have grown up with Christianity, including Nick and myself, it's like it's hard to accept because it's there's a strongly ingrained sense of sort of the good guys and bad guys, sinners and punishment and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but
seek outside of yourself for heaven or whatever have you, Yeah.
But something in Buddhism which doesn't really have that same sort of thing is there's this great kind of story. I think Stanley can probably tell it the best.
Stanley's our registered.
Mainly because I forgot his name. I typed. Yeah.
Is it Angulimala?
I like how you read my mind
There you
before
go,
I sheepishly had to butcher his name 40 times. Okay, cool.
So you want me to tell
Could you,
the story?
please give us a QRD.
It's
quick
a
rundown of the story.
beautiful story, and every time I hear it through a podcast, because I have a Buddhism podcast, or like a Buddhism podcast that I listen to, and every time they tell the story, every time I re-listen to it, genuinely brings tears to my eyes. So there's this guy called Angulimala, and he is a Brahmin. So if anyone doesn't know, Brahmin is a religious caste of Hindu society, and he's the favorite of his teacher. Now, because he's the favorite, all the other students around him are pretty jealous by that. So the other disciples, they come up with lies and they smear his name, besmirch his name, and then the teacher, I guess, falls for the tricks and sends him out. Just basically wants to get rid of him because he believes in the lies. And Angulimala, not knowing that he was being tricked, asks his teacher, okay, like, what can I do to become enlightened? What can I do to learn the final Brahmin secret? And then his teacher, wanting to basically ruin his karma, says, you have to gather 10,000 or 1,000 or 10,000 fingers.
Oh, I know the story. Yeah, sorry.
So he goes around basically killing people, and this is something we've mentioned today, Giorgio and I. So here's another plug. Lisa, the the road to good intentions is, what's the quote?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
There you go. That's the quote. I didn't know. I knew Angulimala. I didn't know that quote.
Wait, no Lisa spoilers before you say it, because that's a...
Yeah, 100%.
That's a whole other thing.
But that, those good intentions don't necessarily manifest, in a good place. Anyway, regardless, the point being, he goes around killing people and collecting these fingers, and he gets the name Angulimala, actually translates to like a garland of fingers, because he wears it around his neck. That's the only way he can preserve it.
S.CHING Goenka said this story of Vipassana as well.
Was he the main? Oh, this exact story.
Yeah.
Not the same. Not this early preamble.
I didn't know about it. I
focuses...
thought he was just a negative person. I didn't know Angulimala was like a Brahmin.
He was on the way to, or he was a Brahmin, and basically word gets out. There's a serial killer. The king of the local region sends his forces to apprehend him and kill him, and then Angulimala's mother finds out, and then so she's like, wait, I'm not letting my son get killed. So she tries to intervene. Now, thank God the Buddha was on site, and he overhears this, and he realizes that Angulimala, in his quest to complete the 1,000 or 10,000 fingers,
he's going to end up killing his mother. And that is, some serious karma debt.
Right.
You take out your mom. That's like, that's some really bad karma. So he intervenes. And he, before the knights come or before the soldiers come, before the mother comes, he finds Angulimala and he tries to speak to him. But Angulimala is just not listening. He just wants the final few fingers. And he chases him. And he, has a knife out. He's trying to cut the Buddha. And no matter what he does, he just can't reach the Buddha. He's always off by an inch, by a centimeter, by a few meters. It's just always off. And he's just chasing him and chasing him and chasing him. And he's trying to actually, get the last few fingers. And at the end, he throws down his knife out of just anger and just like, how, what are you doing? Stop. Like, how can you keep, evading me? How can you keep moving? And the Buddha says something which is, genuinely like really beautiful. And he turns to Angulimala and he says, I have stopped. I have stopped the cycle of rebirth, the cycle of pain, the cycle of karma. Why don't you stop?
Right.
And then at that moment, Angulimala, gets to his knees and he just starts crying.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And he just breaks down. And, really, really, really beautiful story.
Dude, I remember hearing that of Vipassana. And the one thing that came to my mind first immediately was in Vagabond, where it's just like the cycle of death continues forever. Yeah.
Cycle of death.
Yeah. But like for me, what is the Angulimala? Okay, for you, what is what's his name? I don't want to say it.
Angulimala.
What is it? What do you extract from that?
I think, and I'd like to hear Giorgio's interpretation because you brought up this guy, so I'm sure there's a reason you did it.
Yeah, that's right. You were the original.
Yeah, I just offloaded the storytelling to Stanley because I knew he'd do it better.
I see a man who is obsessed with words. He's obsessed with a task, but he is unable to process the task. So in many ways, he's quite robotic.
Yeah.
Do certain things and you get a certain reward. And he's very bound to a word, to routine. And I see him as someone, as I mentioned before, who has good intentions. He actually wants to fulfill his social obligations to the Brahmins or whatever, but he doesn't have the wisdom. And I think that's a big thing in Buddhism. And we mention Buddhism a lot in a Vagabond podcast because if you actually end up reading it, like Buddhism and Taoism, these are like real philosophies that constantly pop up. It's not just about
it's not one arc, by the way. It goes
they're all different virtues you need. Like he has that strong determination, the adhitthana, but he lacks panya.
Yeah, he lacks wisdom. Yeah, and that's what I think.
I think that's pretty spot on. That also reminded me of what Shinryu Suzuki says, where he's Mahayana mind, or Mahayana mind. But what's the other one? Hinayana.
There's Theravada. Theravada is the first one.
Theravada is the first one.
There's Mahayana and there's Vajrayana is the last one.
Vajrayana. I think
Mahayana is all probably all in Mahayana territory. It's all Zen.
Zen is Mahayana.
Yeah. So the characteristics, according to Shinryu Suzuki, and this will tie back into what I'm talking about, Vagabond and Angulimala, is that with Mahayana, there's a level of looseness involved within Mahayana, right? There's it's more of the idea. It's akin to the metaphor of the finger pointing at the moon. Don't mistake the finger point for the moon. It's more about the practice itself, the visceral practice of Buddhism, as opposed to the very strict nature in which you would use to practice Buddhism, right? Those are very explicitly two different things, right? But Shinryu.
Can I jump in just for 1 second? One of my friends said one of my favorite quotes when it comes to Buddhism, and he said the Buddha, his goal was to create other Buddhas, not Buddhism.
Right, yeah, beautiful, yeah. See, that's the problem that I find this tangent with Christianity. I feel maybe Jesus Christ didn't, if he was real or wasn't real, I don't think he tended to start Christianity or like he wanted to start a church, but not Christianity. But there was this other one called Mahayana Buddhism, and there was
Hinayana is basically
Hinayana. That's the word.
That's Theravada. So there's two different names.
Right, yeah, I see.
Hinayana is another way of saying Theravada.
Right. Okay, I'll say Theravada because it's easier to say. But according to Shunryu Suzuki, Theravada is a way more strict
Way more
practice.
strict.
Is like
Way
extremely.
Vipassana is based on Theravada stuff. That's
Theravada,
why
yeah.
we live in such crazy monk lifestyle.
I see. Yeah. So Shunryu Suzuki says your mind has to be Mahayana, but your body has to be Theravada. And he says that's how he talks about
My
Buddhism.
man.
And he's like that's the nature.
Middle
So
way,
like
baby.
if you go to like a Zen monastery or whatever and you try to practice Soto Zen, like the conditions are extremely strict. In fact, more strict than Vipassana. Like there's a huge emphasis on like your posture, like huge. With Vipassana, it's like get into any position you're comfortable with, and then do Aditana. Right, and then if you find for a beginner, if you find yourself in excruciating pain, feel free to change your posture. Right, but for people who aren't beginners, it's way more Theravada. But like, yeah, Zen, Soto Zen's extremely Theravada, Theravada. But they emphasize, Shunryu Suzuki emphasizes, though in understanding, has to be Mahayana, right? And I see that within Vagabond very vividly. It's just like it's not. I see that within the fight between Denshiro and Musashi. Way later on in the. Oh yeah. Also, I'm gonna put in the title the spoilers. And
Straight up.
Yeah. But
50 minutes in. Oh, by the way, sorry guys.
in the fight between Denshiro and Musashi, you see like Musashi is at that point in the arc, like 3/4 of the way through the story. I think you would say he's very much developed the Mahayana, the wisdom, the Praya.
Panya.
You see him develop the banya and like the wisdom and the Mahayana. The idea of being like water, like the idealization of water. At the same time, it's just like it's not about the words that you use to get to something. It's the experience of something in of itself that gets you to where you need to be in terms of the Buddhist practice and like in the flow and the Tao, the flow, the Dhamma or the Dharma, however you want to call it, the way. All these different words. Whereas Denshiro was someone just because of by virtue of him being like the leader of a clan or whatnot.
The son of the leader.
The son of the leader of the clan, which is the immense pressure placed on him. His practice is extremely Theravada-like. It's very rigid. It's very like, I have to do X, Y, Z. Like, like getting good at life, or in this case, fighting is a numbers game. You know what I mean? And how quickly, and he's very adept samurai.
Yeah.
But, that did not compare to Musashi. Like his water-like nature in the fight, and like that's why he loses immediately. Actually, it's interesting how that chapter starts off by letting you know he loses, and then he gets to that. You get to that like 20 chapters later. Well, like you start off like it's almost like immediate knowledge. It's just like, yep, Denshiro loses because it's too rigid, and you see it in his face. You see it in the way the character's presented. It's very, extremely rigid, tall, like like a rock.
Mountain.
He's a mountain.
He's an absolute mountain man, hey.
Yeah.
But also you see the duality between wisdom for what it is, the felt wisdom, and like wisdom through words, the detached, the intellectual game.
Wisdom through routine.
Yeah, wisdom through routine. You see this fall apart when Musashi first comes in contact with the Yagyu. You know what I mean? Like when he's about to kill the leader of the Yagyu. I forget his name, like his first name. But
wait, before you jump into that,
yeah.
I do want to touch about Den Shichiro.
Yes.
It's interesting that when he's swinging his sword at Musashi is actually thinking to himself, like, why are you holding the sword like that? Like, don't you realize you can cut anything if you just hold it?
Yeah.
Have some looseness in it. And then when he actually strikes down Den Shichiro, which I won't explain how, Den Shichiro's disciples ask him, like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know. I just did it in the moment. Like, I just grabbed, that certain piece of equipment and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it just happened. There was no planning. But let's back to you, Giorgio, because you did bring up Angulimala for a second.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Whoops.
And I'm
But
sure
you're
there's
all
a
sitting
reason.
there on the edge of your seats with your bloody anticipation. Look. The reason I brought it up initially is because of this very fact. Okay, actually, I'm glad we got into the Denshiro sort of like tangent here because.
Wait, by the way, I think this is the only time I'll be able to correct people on their pronunciation, and you guys dropping like Sanskrit words everywhere. So I'm pretty sure it's Den Shichiro.
Right.
I thought it was Danish. Okay. Wait, what's the official stance?
Okay.
Then Shichiro.
Am I the official?
Stanley's
You're the
adjudicator.
official, so if anything says wrong, blame Stanley. His email address, his home address.
Asian correspondent.
We're saying Den Shichiro on the good word of Stanley Ching.
Yes. And if it's not, then it's
Come out.
it's
Stanley.
Nicholas's fault.
Okay.
I'm the third guy here, right? So come to me if these guys are... Okay, I'll come to you last. So Den Shichiro, right, like you said, he's unable to learn anything new. He's got this great willpower, similar to Musashi himself, but the key difference is Musashi's able to learn. Now, similar to, Angulimala, right, is that, Musashi is sort of like, is this really strong-willed figure who's fundamentally in moha, or ignorance. And yeah, I have to drop the Pali, baby. You got to drop
Isn't
the Pali.
it Mara? Or is that illusion?
That's illusion. Moha is ignorance.
Okay. How separate are they? Are they the same thing or they're not?
Maya is meant to be the game of sensations, if I'm not mistaken.
I honestly don't know.
Like the duality of life, good and bad. Like Maya or Mara spins, dances endlessly, giving up the illusion of life, or the animals, per Jung says. But Buddha ends up defeating. Quick side tangent. Buddhist law. So his Buddha dispels the illusions of Maya by picking up a blade of grass and declaring his enlightenment per the grounding of the world, as opposed to the frivolous nature of the...
Oh, is this when Buddha touches the ground?
Yeah.
And he says, Mara says, what is the point? Who recognizes your enlightenment? And he says, the earth is my witness.
Yeah, that's the one.
What a quote.
Badass, man.
Bruh.
Continue, sorry.
So yeah, look, that's pretty much like... I think that the Musashi's capability to learn is what makes him like Angulimala.
Yeah.
Because Angulimala became a fully enlightened person. He became a Buddha in his own right. After he'd sort of gone through, he'd become, a near demon, or as close to a demon as a man can get, and he'd been fully absolved of that. Even absolved, that confirms my Western bias using a word like that. But he'd moved towards true Buddhahood, right? And you can say the same about Musashi. Musashi sort of learns from all his opponents, and he has this radical development, which a lot of his opponents don't. So a lot of guys who are outclassing him, and this is where while I'm still hogging the mic here, I want to go to a tangent about Den Shichiro, as per Stanley's official pronunciation. Den Shichiro and his brother, Seigero. Seigero is what Stanley told me for the podcast to call him. Seigero, right?
Whose brother?
Very, very pretty boy.
I'm pretty sure it's, Seiji.
Likes
By
his,
the way, it is Den
sake
Shichiro.
women.
Den
There we go.
Shichiro.
Den Shichiro, okay.
Anyway, you heard it here first.
Yeah, there we go.
Beautiful.
Stan's got
beautiful.
the law book.
All right. All right, so Den Shichiro and Seigero. Now, Seigero is kind of the opposite, because Seigero has a lot of natural talent because of his fluidity. So, Seigero can adapt to combat really well, and his whole character reflects that. He's sort of like, he likes to take it easy with, he likes hanging out with, getting it on with the ladies. He likes drinking sake. He's a real man in the flesh. He's kind of like a warrior version of Matahachi in a lot of ways.
He's like a successful Matahachi.
Yeah, it's kind of what Matahachi wishes he was.
Yeah.
Except he's sort of damned by his sort of, I guess you could say, his family obligation, which to sort of like be the head of the school, which he doesn't necessarily want to do. But what's interesting is where both the brothers fail in opposite ways. Like you guys were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Den Shichiro's stiffness is the very thing that allows Matahachi to slay him easily. And
Musashi to slay him.
sorry, Musashi to slay him. Yeah. While Seigero.
Parallel universe.
And I'm so glad it doesn't, man. If Stanley was here, this podcast would be a train wreck. Jesus Christ.
Matahachi just out of nowhere.
I was like, was this the part of the manga that I was trying to read that wasn't loading? So I just skipped it in hopes I didn't get anything fucked from it.
You miss one page, man. All this crazy shit happens.
It happened to me when Matahachi, before the fight, like there was this whole like 2 chapters that couldn't load, and I'm just like, I went to the 2 chapters afterwards. I'm like, I really fucking hope nothing pivotal happened. I'm like, is that what happened? Sorry. Yeah.
But look, when Seigero comes at Musashi, not Matahachi, Musashi, when he comes at him, he actually has this strong will he wants to protect his brother, and that's why he wants to preemptively kill, Musashi. But he loses a duel because he's distracted in a brief moment. And this distraction kind of shows what happens when, you're fluid, you have the ability to adapt, but you don't have the same determination and focus You don't have to use the Buddhist values again. You don't have the samadhi, the concentration necessary to fight. You know, sort of like he's like Seigero has a lot of great talent. He's really fluid. He's got a great, what you could call like fighter IQ, the ability to adapt and respond and to sort of be improvisational where it's appropriate. But just through lack of sheer, you know, focus, he just takes his eyes off the prize for a second. And, you know, Musashi wanted to win more because he is very focused.
Yeah.
And by that point in the story, our sort of like crazy demon Musashi has become a lot more wise. He doesn't even want to fight either of these guys, but he's sort of, you know, he knows how to out-fluid the rigid guy, and he knows how to out-discipline the really, you know, sort of adaptable guy.
He's got breadth.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of why I brought up Angulimala earlier, because like he's sort of a character who goes down to the depths, but then he sort of, you know, he's able to turn his ultimate weaknesses of his sort of great defilement of his, you know, sort of like actions.
Or great, he's, you know, that's the weakness, but his great strength is great discipline.
Exactly, and he harnesses the energy behind his defilements, which is what you sort of alluding to earlier with Daniel Ingram, Nick, of like he has this sort of like one of his essays in Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha is about harnessing the energy of your defilements, and it's about essentially that, you know, beneath all things that you could see as defilements are just fundamentally misguided or ignorantly driven things that ultimately want a good thing. Like, for example, say you're angry and you have this sort of rage, you fundamentally want justice. You want to right a perceived wrong. Or if you're a real hedonistic pleasure seeker, fundamentally you want to be happy. You want to live a good life. You're just not necessarily doing that in the best way.
Yeah.
And so likewise, in the context of combat that you see in Vagabond here is, you know, sort of Musashi is able to harness the energy of his own defilements. He turns this, he sort of has to wrestle with his shit, which is being obsessed about being the best and the, you know, strongest under the heavens, and his issues with his father and all that. But, you know, he sort of uses that energy. He doesn't see, just because this is symptom, I can't actually, you know, actualize myself. He still does it, but he's just kind of like I like the analogy you brought up earlier, Nick. He's rewriting the operating system as he's running it, you know, which is really great thing to see, because he is this defiled being undefiling himself through his defilements. And you kind of see him just his issues constantly keep coming back. He's sort of bloodlust, but he's progressively working through it, and he's working from where he's at. He's not just trying to skip to this sort of ideal of perfection. He's not trying to skip to Buddhahood. He's not trying to throw his stuff away. I think what's cool about Musashi is that he's open to experience, and he feels through his own karma, and he works through it naturally from where he's at, rather than trying to aim for where he thinks he should be. And that's what makes him so successful developing as a character.
Yeah.
And on that point, I think I'm jumping to the very end. You know, we're going to jump around the story, but another thing I really appreciated and something that really touched me was, as Giorgio says, he seeks wisdom. He's flexible enough to seek wisdom in different places. And at the end, this samurai, basically, he at the end is the closest he gets. By the way, when I say at the end, the manga's not actually finished. It's on hiatus. Hopefully it comes back, but you know, at the latest chapter available, he seeks advice from a lowly farmer. And at that point in the manga, he is as close to invincible under the heaven as you can possibly get.
And he's also the furthest away from it egoically identifying with it too, which is I find the best paradox.
Exactly. And there's a scene at the end when people ask him, like, what are you doing? You're basically Michael Jordan. Everyone knows you're LeBron James. You are the talk of the town. People are fearing you. And why are you plowing a field? And there's a line he says which really, you know, speaks to me. He says, you know, for too long as a samurai, I was just so reliant upon like pushing, strength. Now I have to learn how to yield. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And he seeks wisdom. He's fluid enough, he's wise enough to seek wisdom in different places. And at the very end, he seeks it from the earth.
Yeah. Like, I remember, like, I just reread that whole arc recently, actually, and it's just like the senior farmer, I forget his name completely, but he's sort of passing judgment onto Musashi, saying, what do you know about yielding? What do you know about the weak? Like, you know nothing about them your whole life. You've only delved within the strong, or amongst the strong, and your whole life you've been, like, killing the weak. While farming is completely different. Farming is about nurturing and respecting the weakness. And obviously there's a metaphor of just like, not just like cultivating rice in the farming arc, but it was just like the weakness in people and etc. And it's just like Musashi has a very hard time integrating what it means to deal with weakness and come across weakness and helping cultivate and afford, personhood through trampling weakness. Not trampling weakness, but like sort of, growth or whatever you want to call helping, bolstering sort of anything that's weak. Interesting, amazing. I reckon that's my favorite arc, by the way. I reckon farming arc. If you're a true Vagabond fan, you know the farming.
The gentleman's pick, hands down. No one's gonna argue that. Yeah.
It's just like, you got killing, whatever. The 70, nah. It was
cool,
a farming arc. It's a farming arc. It's a farming arc. That's the real juice. That's the real meat. I genuinely believe that though. Like, as far as like the culmination of the philosophy that bleeds throughout Vagabond, I think the farming arc is the pinnacle of the story.
I think my favorite. It's
that
really
and the
hard
first
to choose.
Yagyu.
I love Yagyu.
Yeah.
When he approaches, what is
I want to talk about
invincible.
that next. Actually.
And I think that's the power of this piece of art. There's a scene when later on Musashi, I guess it's not a spoiler because he's a samurai, but he kills a lot of people.
What the fuck?
Oh, what? Samurai's killing people?
What the hell?
Yeah, but he takes out a lot of people, and I don't think that's any of our favorite. That's not our favorite part.
It's cool. Like it's cool in like the Michael Bay way.
Yes,
It's a spectacle and art.
Oh, it's one hell of a spectacle.
It's beautifully done. Like it's amazing. It's like such a cool part. It's the peak of a certain motif in the story. But yeah, sorry.
Well, at that moment, he has reached. I guess in many ways, like he's become one with the sword, but his ego is also quite fixed with it.
Yeah. Well, see, that's tying into the Yagyu sort of idea here. What he learns, like
Yagyu, by the way, is just for the people who, if you haven't read, he's a very famous he started a school of swordsmanship, and he became very, very famous and well renowned throughout Japan to the point where he was personally, or his grandson was personally training the emperor. So yeah, a very, very famous school in Japan.
Is that actual history?
That is actual history.
Right, interesting. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, you know the grandson who looks a lot like Musashi?
Yeah.
Basically, carbon copy of him.
Yeah.
He goes and he trains with the emperor, or he trains the emperor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. See, that's the other cool thing about this. This is actually like somewhat of a historical story. Like continuously, you'll probably find a lot of that throughout it. Like, yeah. There's actually, what's that real island? The Ganryu.
Oh yeah. Which from memory, is that Kojiro's school of?
Ganryu is the Kojiro's style.
Is that Kojiro style, or is that
Kojiro's style? The Ganryu style. I don't think it was
something about school. Like rock. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
but
I don't really remember.
There's an actual island where Musashi and Kojiro fight. That's not in the manga yet, but it's an actual island where they fight, and they renamed the island in real life, not because of the manga, because it's happened like 300 years ago. But yeah, the thing with the Yagyu is the Musashi and the Yagyu. It shows he goes up to the Yagyu, the master, while he's sleeping or kind of sleeping, and he's like, "What does it mean to be invincible?" And he looks at him and says, "These are just words. They mean nothing." You know what I mean? And that's like the first. That was like the seed planted of like the frivolous nature of just like a title that someone bestows upon you, or the title that you yourself participate within creating. It's merely a title, it's just words, right? And then I feel like by the time he fights the 70 and he has nationwide acclaim to that title, like he himself realizes the futility of the words of being invincible under the heavens,
because
just heat haze is what he says.
And because like Angulimala, he's trapped in a cycle of death, and he realizes he might have killed these people, but he can't get away from it. People chase him around trying to kill him, and he's actually less free than he was before the fight.
Angulimala had that as well. Like he was like, oh, you say you're enlightened, but you've done all this. People would, attack him in the streets, and he would just respond to them with compassion and say, "I understand you hate me out of ignorance in the same way I killed out of ignorance."
Exactly. Yeah, it's super interesting, man, because the way I feel like we're geared. This is a grand statement now, just like sociological, philosophical kind of
Oh,
situation.
hell yeah.
But the way that we're kind of geared towards, at least in the West, out of my personal experience, I feel like everyone here could sort of comment on that too. It's just like we're geared towards getting titles throughout our whole life. We're like geared to become successful as far as like a certain measure of social, success. What does it mean to be like this person or that person, or like, I'm the CEO of the Bank of Westpac. It's just like on one hand you can see that like a fiefdom, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the owner of some great fiefdom, and be like, I'm this person. There's so much grandeur and luster that's bestowed upon a certain title. And then at the end of the day, what does that translate to an actual lived experience in life? It's just like it can be more shallow than not even having that. You know what I mean? Like, Musashi with the title of Invincible Under the Heavens. It's just like when you get close to it, when you personalize it, I find, when you really investigate the lived experience of it, you realize it means nothing. That's actually like maybe a bit of a spoiler towards our Vipassana podcast, but something I realize in Vipassana, just like, when you're doing something, you're operating in the real world, when you're in such an environment, when you're meditating every day, like how nothing intellect means, or like how nothing in the moment of actually the lived experience, walking amongst trees. It's not like you're saying to yourself, I'm walking amongst trees, and then the beauty comes. It's like the beauty exists under that. The walking amongst the trees is just like a little like smoke burning off a candle. As soon as it comes, it goes. These are just like small little one-dimensional characterizations of a specific moment and perception that just vanishes immediately as soon as it's uttered, like the Tao, the name of the Tao. But yeah, it's a beautiful allusion to that I find in Buddhism, in this story, in his arc, that I fucking love. So good. Amazing. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Now, yeah, it's a really it's interesting because as you were saying that last stuff, especially, my mind went to Kojiro, because like you said, he is a man without words. He was sort of born without them. Like Musashi is a man who's sort of learning how to. He's a man with an epic poem, and he said, and it's no surprise that he later became an artist and a philosopher and a poet, because he has this great meta narrative. What is my life? What is the goal of my life? Even when he's just a brute, he does think artistically, or at least, except he's the main character of that particular story. I don't mean the story that I don't mean Vagabond, that story, but I mean like the fact that he's the main character of the story in his head that he's telling himself. While Kojiro has this sort of pure, unadulterated, just connect to his experience. And I guess that's kind of the ways they're foiled as well, is that one of the interesting traits about Musashi is that despite his sort of virile, masculine sort of confidence, he's a virgin, and he's also, not a big drinker, which are two like sort of, traits of like, I guess you'd associate with pleasure, like sex and alcohol. While, Kojiro, who's this sort of great warrior, is also this very carefree, light-hearted man. He's, he's always gallivanting around with, these pretty young ladies, and he's always, smashing down sake, and he can drink with the best of them. And, it's almost like Kojiro has this sort of, he doesn't take life that seriously, that he can sort of enjoy these sort of more base pleasures. While Musashi is...
Mahayana.
Yeah, exactly.
Kojiro's the definition of Mahayana,
Exactly, yeah. I don't know if the Mahayana guys themselves will tell you to go around and, get it on with the ladies and bloody smash sake. But hey, in spirit, I get you.
In the sense of like how there's stories of like yogis and gurus and sages going around being like, oh yeah, I drink or I fuck or whatever.
We expect them to be.
But they're still like completely like what comes first is the experience, not the actual like.
I mean, Takuan.
It
goes around like messing with people.
Yeah, bro. Takuan's like
he's a cheeky monk.
Right. Shout out to Takuan.
Takuan's probably Takuan's a great character. Yeah,
straight out.
I wanted to ask you, Stanley. I remember once you messaged me and you sent me a picture of you said one of your favorite panels that you love, and it was Takuan saying, "We are all under heavens, our path decided, but at the same time equally free." I've been struggling to really get to the bottom of that meaning. Like, just on a very logical level, like, how can your path be fully decided under the heavens, but at the same time, you could be completely free? Like, what did that mean to you? Like, yeah.
To me, what I saw was Takuan struggling with the idea of cruelty and pain.
Yeah.
Because he goes around walking through human society and he sees pain. And that's really the foundation of a lot of religions. There's pain in the world. There's suffering in the world. What can we do about it? And
religions, a lot of religions give you antidotes, you know, like pray or
Sectarian.
do whatever, blah, 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 meditate, whatever it is. And for Takuan, it was internalizing, like, you know, where does this pain come from? And then there's a scene where he goes on the beach and then he sees lightning, and then he has the words that Nick just said, which is, you know, you are free once you realize, you know, your path has already been determined by the heavens, or something like that. And what that said to me, what that meant to me was, once you let control, once you let go of control, once you let go of the reins of life, and you're able to experience and not be so focused on like maintaining power. You're not trying to wrestle with life. You're not trying to make things go your way. Once you realize that your path and that life, there's already like almost a predetermined nature of life. The sun rises, the moon rises. There's already this like set of routine. And I know that goes really against the Western mindset, which is a lot about agency and individualism. Like in the West, it's you have a personal connection to God, and thus all your actions are, you know, ratified or you know, ratified by God or whatever. But in the Eastern mindset, it's almost like there's this system that already produces life. There's a system produced by heaven, by nature, by the Tao, by whatever it is, where life naturally comes along with that. And with that comes suffering.
Right, yeah.
And with that comes joy. And if you look at, like, we'll just take Shintoism, but this applies to a lot of other religions in the East. Like, the sea both gives in terms of fish and kills with tsunamis. So, like, once you realize that, you know, life and death, pain and joy are a part of life, and you realize this is all part of nature's design. This is part of the heavens' design. Once you realize that, you let go. And there's a freedom of not asking, why me? Why am I in pain? Why is this happening to me? And once you let go of that, really that's probably the greatest affliction we have, our internal mind and the whisperings we say to ourselves. So that's what I thought Takuan was saying. Once you let go of that internal strife, that's when you're the most free.
Right. Interesting.
I agree with that
beautiful.
too.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to that because like I've sort of like had glimpses of this, just glimpses in like my, I don't know, meditation experiences, that it's like I've seen that the more attached I am to my own idea of what I want out of my life, the less free I am to actually appreciate whatever life is giving me.
Yeah.
And then from the level beyond, and then it goes to the next step further, that it's like once you actually stop trying to get a certain thing, you actually feel as if you have freedom, because you're not at the bondage of your own reactions. You know, you're not at the bondage or at least as much.
Sankaras.
Yeah, of Sankaras, exactly. At the bondage
I'm going
of,
through
I
a
crave
Buddhism
this.
101 course right now.
Yeah, man. Our Vagabond podcast turns straight over to like a Buddhist propaganda channel there.
Nah, dude, I reckon.
You can't separate the two. You got to.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah,
You cannot.
You
We
cannot
couldn't have
separate-
any meaningful conversation about Vagabond without going this way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. I feel like, I don't know, maybe the podcast would have been slightly different maybe so far if you had like three, just as much as we're into like Buddhism and like philosophy and etc., Buddhist philosophy, but you had like three like people who are very into the art of fighting.
Oh man,
I wonder how
I'd like
much-
to hear that podcast. That'd
Imagine
be cool.
what that would
Yeah.
sound like. Not to say it's better or worse, but just like I wonder what direction that would take. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But like, yeah, no.
Well, that's just a testament to Vagabond. Let me just gush about Vagabond for a second. What's so cool about it is how multifaceted it is.
Yeah.
Because we're coming here from this, wherever perspective we're coming from, the kind of the way we're inclined to see it. But I think at its core, like any other great work of art, you can't really pin it down. And, you know, I hope no one in the audience thinks we're coming here with all the answers. We're just really saying how it struck us each personally.
Yeah.
And I reckon, you get three different dudes instead of us. And, like I said, a bunch of fighters or people from any walk of life, and they're going to see something different. Like, I think it's just a really rich story.
Yeah.
And as a rich story, it's going to be able to just be a rich mirror up to your own soul,
And just to jump in, I went to Japan 2 years ago, and I did this. Funny enough, Airbnb has tours. I'm not sure if people know that. People just think of it as a place you can stay. The tours are really good, and I went to a few tours around Japan, or through a few experiences, I should say. And I did a almost like a day LARPing. For people who don't know, live action role playing as a samurai, where we like trained, we spoke, we dressed in samurai clothes with with a real samurai. And at the end, I was like, I need to speak to him about Vagabond. So I pop up to him like at the very end, like, hey, do you know Vagabond? And he's just gushing about it. And I asked him, because he was pretty fluent in English, like, you know, like Vagabond is really about Musashi living in a time before police, before like law was just everywhere. He just goes around killing people.
Cut down anyone you want.
Yeah. Like obviously you can't do that. And talking and continuing Giorgio's comment about multifaceted, like what do you see out of it? Because obviously you can't go around cutting down people who like disrespect you. And he says, well, you know, what I really take from it is the spirit of discipline and the spirit of growth. And he would obviously see it in a much more like sword fighting way. Like I'm sure, because he's just got experience, which we don't.
Yeah.
But he got that out of it as well.
Yeah.
Whilst we, you know, we might be more inclined towards the philosophical aspects. But yeah, he just said like Musashi's striving for understanding. And really, like if you look at what Musashi, what his journey is, he goes from chasing a goal and then self-reflecting and then realizing that goal is corrupt, or that's not the goal he actually wants to go to.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of self-reflection in that. And even if you don't pick up a sword, like I've never picked up a, you know, I guess I have.
Katana.
I guess I have picked up, you know, via Nicholas, but I don't own one. I haven't stabbed anyone, you know, yet. So, but I see the discipline.
Yeah,
I see the will.
That's the thing, like
Huge.
dude, that was actually the reason why I got my katana, because I was like, I didn't buy the katana because I fucking needed to defend myself, or like, you know, I was under threat or something, you know, like it's not a fucking weapon for me. Like the katana at home, funnily enough, it sits in front of a statue of the Buddha, you know, you know what I mean, with like a bamboo next to it too, and like sometimes I put the Vagabond, my copy of Vagabond next to it. But like,
Bro, we're such Buddhist weebs. Bro, we stand Buddhism so much.
but that's the thing. It's just like, dude, that's the thing. It's like what most weebs are into. It just like, you know, anime, you know, references or whatever. It's just like, oh yes, anime references. No,
Yeah.
OG weebs, man.
OG weebs. It's just like, just simping for the East. Full stop.
The original Goku, man. That was it.
But yeah, I bought it. Well, obviously with the Ziz quote on there, and like
Obviously
with the
course,
Ziz,
bro.
of like saying we're all gonna make it. And so like what I bought the katana, like it was again like exactly what the real samurai from Japan was saying. It's just like the idea of just like, you know, self-progression, you know what I mean, focus and everything like that. It's all entwined within the sword. The sword's a metaphor for that. It's not like an actual fucking weapon, even though it is an actual weapon, you know. But like, yeah, it's the metaphoric sort of, you know, striving the sword. That's what it means for me.
And just to jump on the symbolism of the sword, I'm going to switch to another manga, Berserk. You actually realize that Guts never lets go of his sword, ever. Like, you know, until, yeah. Anyway, I won't go into the spoilers, but he basically never lets go of his sword, ever. And that, I think, really reflects on him symbolically as a character. He's a struggler. He fights to the very end. He will die with his sword in his hand, and he knows no other way. And in that sense, as you were saying, Nicholas, like the sword becomes a symbol of progress or struggle or the fight.
Exactly. We're just being alive. You know, that's like the bottom line. It's just like the sword. For me, once I was meditating, I had this fucking very cool I was meditating with the sword. You know what I mean? I was meditating with the sword, and then after, like, I got out of meditation, I unsheathed it. You know, and like unsheathing a sword straight out of meditation is very, very. You're fully like, you feel connected on like a level it's more than just unsheathing a sword. But it just like in that moment, like something clicked in me. It's just like the sheer unsheathing of a sword is just the cold hard expression of life force. Is something that I was just connected to. It's not like you unsheath the sword to end someone, but like, you know, maybe historically, yeah, in more often than not in history, unsheathing the sword meant someone's gonna die. You know, but like in that one moment where I meditated, you know, it was just unsheathing the sword for me. I had like this profound connection, just expression of life, and not just like expression, like artistic expression, but just like the receptiveness of being alive, like extremely receptive to the core element of just being alive as expression itself. It's like, I exist. You know
That's a
what I
big
mean?
part of Vagabond too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool moments where it's like, yeah, our crazy barbarian hero just takes a moment to just, I don't know, enjoy the moonlight, or just like,
Yeah.
just to like, man, this is a cool world. You know,
Those panels are drawn so well. Man.
yeah, just the occasional sensitive moment, and you know, there's way more of them as the story goes on, because as he sort of develops, as we've said,
Wait, before you jump into your point,
yeah,
can I go back onto your idea of the sword as a symbol?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in Western philosophy because we actually haven't talked about that for a while. But as you're saying, like, the sword is the struggle of life in many ways. That really reminds me of Albert Camus' quote, which is, the greatest rebellion we can do as existentialists is just to live. That's the greatest rebellion we can do.
Right, yeah, dude, yeah, 100%.
Right, that's the absurd
Yeah.
hero.
Yeah.
And that's what I connect Musashi, and hopefully I connect myself, like, you know, to as well. You know, in such a crazy world, where you know that death is imminent, if you can, as Taekwondo said, like, appreciate as the natural cycle of the world, and there is beauty in that, I guess you're free.
Yeah, dude.
Because what else can life throw at you that's, I guess, worse than death?
Dude, 100%. I want to also tie in a Jungian quote into that. Is like, he says, Jung got asked, what's the biggest affliction that we have as human beings nowadays? He's like, our biggest affliction is our addiction to idealism. Like, the idea of just like, you know, there's this one thing I have to strive towards. There's one thing that's like, has to happen. You know what I mean? Like, this set of values that arises the equation of good and bad, or like being in the light of it, or being antithetical to the light of it. You know, he says that's our biggest affliction. It's just like, we need to have a more accepting idea of how life unfolds. And then, that's how we decrease our suffering. The same thing as this Goenka, Siddhartha,
And
Musashi.
talking about that, before I throw it to Georgia, because I interrupted you, before I really wanted to bring up the Albert Camus point, but you know, I remembered, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring it up, and then I actually forgot about it, and I was like, oh, I got to find it, and then it's ironic how this always happens. I said, you know what, I've forgotten the point, and I'm okay with it. The moment I said that, I swear to God, it came back to me. I swear to God.
that's
dude.
dope.
That's how it works,
it
but
just
dumber.
you keep forcing it, and then you go like,
You're solving the Chinese finger trap, man. Pushing
Yeah.
your fingers in.
exactly.
Exactly, dude. Gio, what are you saying?
Yeah, I was gonna actually. This has made my point even better now, because like we've already got the theme going.
Yes.
I wanted to almost take a step back to this idea of like Musashi's growth. I guess kind of like the samurai dude you met said, and this aspect of growth, and Musashi as the ultimate grower and the ultimate, you know, self-developer in that sense. It's because the nature of his self-development isn't like cultivating this set of values in a very linear way. It very much is just seeing his own deficit in the world, or rather seeing it's like, oh wow, this is where I'm lacking, and he sort of has this sort of like attitude of respect towards, okay, I can really learn this from you, which is kind of why, I guess, going back to the farming guy, the old man expert farmer. The reason why he's so interesting as well is because he is so counter opposite to Musashi, and you can't picture Musashi 300 chapters before that, or even 200 chapters before that, getting on board with this guy.
He would kick his ass.
Dude,
Exactly. It's like,
shit,
you insulting me? I'll kill you, bro. Shut up. But you know, like by that point in the story, he's like, you could tell Musashi's ready to learn from anyone. And it's like he's at the point now where he's got
See
so
the
much.
world in a grain of sand.
Exactly.
Or is it infinity in a grain of sand?
Well, yeah, he's got so much humility that he's just like ready to see everything everywhere. And that's like the idea of, it's like his self-improvement or self-development isn't just like, oh, cultivating this great image. It's just like, let's just get on board with everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got this natural talent, whatever. Let's try and integrate this, integrate that. Which I guess kind of links back to something I said earlier, like the idea of the big mind, or the Buddha mind. The Buddha mind sees all. It's kind of like, it's this, you know, sort of much grander mind. And he's just sort of, to do that, he needs to quite literally dissolve his small mind, or like at least act less in alignment with it by cultivating his Buddha nature, seeing the value in all things. And I think that's why Musashi's sort of philosophical nature is so important. The fact that he does see the beauty in everything, and that enables him to really engage with the world. in a way that, I mean, hopefully Vagabond does get finished, but I'd love to see what the tipping point is that makes him outshine Kojiro as a fighter.
Or what
because
makes
we
him
know
one
it's
of-
not just going to be pure fighting. There's going to have to be a philosophical
do
angle.
you want to know the according to the book from the early 20th century? Do you want to know the ending to that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't even matter because Kojiro's a different character in that book. Like I heard he's a real bastard and he's
Yeah,
real,
he is,
So
he
it's
is.
like I can't even. The dynamic between them isn't the same.
I'll say
You can say if you want,
It is
bring it up.
interesting, just for the sake.
go
of
for
just- It's interesting the way he defeats him. I found it like really strategically, like hard on, strategical hard on. Like what happened was they were fighting on the beach on that island, and what happened was Musashi positioned himself to he started the fight
Yes.
at the position where the sun comes up. So they met at the island just before dawn, right? So, and Musashi didn't have his sword. He had a fucking paddle, right? And then Kojiro had a sword. And then the way he defeated him was when the sun came up, the sun shone directly into Kojiro's eyes, and Musashi jumped over him because he was on a slightly elevated. He had the higher ground, and then he jumps over him and just fucking kills him with a paddle.
Jesus.
No. So along the lines of that. That's how it happens according to. I don't know how that's gonna happen in Vagabond though. I will say some good news for
or
anyone.
even more importantly, what stirs him to fight and kill Kojiro?
That's the other thing.
That's
too.
a really big question.
Yeah.
Because at the end with Shichiro, if you remember, he says, "Are you sure you want to fight? Let's settle this and let's just sit down and let it go." And I love Shichiro. The weight of the world, the weight of his school, the weight of honor, very rigid,
Weight of his father.
very rigid. And actually, one thing that Inoue does, the death scenes are really beautiful, and that death scene with Shichiro is beautiful.
Yeah.
But he was unable to socially and personally let go of the fight, and that makes me ask: after Musashi has adopted so much humility or has become so humble, what makes him want to kill and fight Kojiro?
I personally think what's gonna happen is, I reckon Kojiro just wants to fight for the sake of fun.
Me too.
And then I think he's just gonna, like he was with the snowman situation, where they're fighting with sticks, and then Kojiro unsheaths his sword a little bit, and Musashi pauses. I think it's gonna be something along the lines of that.
Yeah, me too.
Because Kojiro doesn't fight out of anger. He never fought out of anger. The only time he fought out of anger was against Ichusai. You know what I mean? But that gets dissolved fairly quickly. He doesn't really fight out of anger anywhere else. He looks at fighting, like we said earlier, as like a way of communication. You know what I mean? And he probably was just aching to communicate with Musashi. And then I think that's what happens. And then Musashi just kind of maybe accepts that fate.
I think so. I think that's the only way, because if Musashi, I just can't see him running in and wildly attacking this guy after all the progress is made. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it could very much be like a non to the death duel, and it's like there won't be an actual. It could be they fight with oar paddles or sticks again, like they did last time. It'll be this sort of like it'll have the intensity of a sword fight,
Story
but
might
none
even
of the
change.
lethality. Yeah, for
Story
sure.
might even change.
I mean, look, I was gonna say another thing that's worth considering is that even during the farming arc we're talking about earlier, we haven't forgotten that through a lot of that, his bloodlust takes the form of this sort of demon that kind of plagues him.
Yeah, even before.
So he's not out of the woods of that. He's still that's
Yeah,
part
no.
of his karma. That still weighs on his soul.
Dude,
he
that's
still
what
does have bloodlust.
That's what I really enjoyed in it. Like when the first time that ego sort of came up in the form of that little weird, disgusting, like little smudge or whatever you want to call it. Like, it doesn't show Musashi just like have that and then dispel it and then you never see it again. It's not just like it doesn't portray like the battling with the ego as something that just happens in like a few panels and then that's it.
Oh yeah, I'm over it.
Yeah,
I'm a good guy now. I don't want to kill
even in the
anyone.
real world,
Yeah.
like when you're on that quest to sort of like dissolve the ego as much as you can, or a certain understanding, a certain cognition, it's not or trauma. It's not something that just like you work with it once and then it just goes away. Like nah, this is like a thing that grows inside you, that goes away, that comes back, goes away. And Musashi battles with that to the end, which I found cool, really humanizing.
Absolutely.
Again, it isn't just like a perseverance. Like Musashi isn't just like, his perseverance isn't just transferred to the spiritual realm. It's also there to like his struggle. It's constantly there. Like, and that's a fucking mad depiction of like what it's like to actually battle with something like that.
And that's really different to the Abrahamic understanding of good and evil.
yeah.
For example, God smites Satan, or in Armageddon, good or evil, triumph. And it's very final.
Yeah. It's
One
very-
side
it's always-
wins,
Yeah.
and that's it. It's dualism. That's really at the heart of a lot of Abrahamic religions. God and the devil, Satan, and they stand as polar opposites, and there's no overlapping.
Yeah.
But in Eastern religions and Eastern faith and philosophy, there is overlap, and sin is just something that Giorgio often says. Sin is not sin. It's just people who lack wisdom. That's really what it is. It's just mental lapses or spiritual lapses.
You know what sin translates to in Aramaic? I think it's Aramaic or Judeo. Sin actually doesn't mean like outright evil. Sin, this is recent, like not many people know this. Sin, it was meant to mean purely the phrase missing the mark.
Ah.
So it's not like
There
you
we go.
fucked up, like you're a bad person because you're a sinner. It just meant you've missed the mark. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Some
Which I
Latin
found-
dude out there just fucked us up.
Yeah. But dude, mistranslations go a long way.
Absolutely.
Denshiro,
And
go a long way.
and actually, on that point of like finality and the final battle, as you were saying, he constantly chips away at his ego, and it's something that comes back to him constantly. And that really reminds me of another quote in Zen Buddhism where before you become enlightened, you chop wood and you carry water.
Yeah.
And after you become enlightened, you chop wood and you carry water.
Yeah, love that quote.
Yeah, man. That's
I
awesome.
love that quote. I was
That's
thinking-
so good.
How many other Buddhist references can we make?
I think Vagabond is like Buddhist canon.
Yeah.
Vagabond is like in 1,000 years.
It's pretty much scripture, man.
In 1,000 years, it'll be like a koan. The whole
Added to the
fucking-
Pali Canon.
Exactly. It's just like Vagabond in Sanskrit.
There'll be monks talking about strongest under the heaven and heat hazes and
In Vagabond, a time ago. And it was. Like, imagine it in like what's his name, Shunryu Suzuki's voice.
yeah.
Long time ago, Vagabond. Big thick, Musashi, good fighter. And then it just like tells the whole story.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, real talk. I actually think this is all preamble to say that Jotaro is my favorite character. When he killed that fucking dog, dude, like.
Nick, we're cutting the podcast.
Yeah,
here.
that mud had it coming, bro.
But
Actually,
yeah.
can I ask, what are your favorite characters?
I mean, okay, there's along various like dimensions.
Alright, Nick is gonna give us 6 characters.
Okay, I'll give you one. Okay, I'll
He's
give you
gonna
one.
give us 6.
I'll give you one. I love GSI.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's because that's the copy that you gave me. I've just like reread
Uh-huh.
that arc so many times.
Uh-huh.
But like GSI is cool. Itosai is cool. Fuck.
Do you know who GSI is?
Yeah, he's Kojiro's adopted father.
Yeah, dude, I really like his full
He's
arc.
great, man. He's
GSI
awesome.
is like full like self, like delusion and like his whole like his destitute nature, and then he just like just transforms into a savior, and he's humble.
Actually, he's Musashi in many ways because he was considered invincible under the sun.
yeah,
But
Yeah.
Musashi kept growing. He kept seeking. He basically Musashi deconstructed the word, whilst GSI never did.
yeah,
GSI thought he had it and then he lost it, but he never understood that the word itself was deceptive.
yes,
But
yeah.
Musashi did.
Yeah.
I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, and then I'd say I'm gonna go with GSI just because like I really love his story. GSI.
I'm gonna give a boring answer. But first I'll say GSI. He's great. And yeah, he's definitely an underrated side character for sure. I'm gonna give a boring answer and just straight up say Musashi. Come on, man. He's got the
You
most
like
development.
You like
I like
Naruto?
Goku, Naruto. But I like Sonic, man. Like, all right. Look,
You like Ash Ketchum?
my favorite Pokemon? Pikachu, baby. Yeah, like, red version, I like Charizard, bro.
When I got Pikachu, when I got Ruby, my whole inventory, my whole like fucking like
6 Pikachus, bro. Like,
6
straight up.
Pikachus.
Straight up team of 6 Pikachus, level 100.
Mine was Rayquaza. I had 6 Rayquaza.
6 Rayquazas. I had like the emerald version cloning trick, so you get 6 Rayquazas.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh my god.
Musashi's
All right,
very
Pokemon podcast, man. All right, look, here's what I like about Musashi, man.
He's hot.
He's a babe, bro.
He's
He's,
hot,
he's
I
a
think I look
hunk.
like him, to be
Oh
honest.
shit!
Oh man, look, you know what? I was thinking about it's the whole growth thing, man. Like, look, okay, favorite character from like, oh my god, he's so cool. It's actually Kojiro for me.
Yeah.
I love Kojiro. The whole like, he's this badass, the innocence of a
Literally
child.
water.
Yeah, like it's like
Literally
there's something
water.
really aspirational about him. Like I'd see Kojiro, I'm like, dude, this is like a peak human being. Like he has something so precious in him. But like the thing, Musashi, to me is more. There's I think we all have a part of Kojiro in ourselves that we can tap into. But the thing about Musashi is that he takes on everyone, or at least the story is written in a way that we can see him integrating his inner Kojiro. He learns from Seigero. He learns from Dennis Shichiro. He learns from everybody. Like he learns from Takuma, whatever. Like I'm gonna list every character in the bloody manga. But like I think of this sense of there's this foolhardiness that I really love. That's sort of like Musashi is ultimately just a guy who's out there really living his life. And if we were talking about earlier about the idea of freedom, Musashi's free because he's constantly trying to, sort of break his conditioning while also fully accepting and working through the fact that he has conditioning.
Yeah.
He's just a guy burning through his karma. He's living his life. He's like, yeah, I want to be the strongest in the heavens. Even after I realize that's bullshit and I'm out here farming to humble myself, I'm still, there's a part of me that sort of has these bloodlust demons whispering in my ears. And there's a very like obscure scene which really, I don't know, really like puts this into perspective for me. Like it was a really one-off, off-the-cuff kind of thing, but it really affected me. Where it's he's in prison, and the elder monks are visiting him. So it's right, he's in prison right after I can't remember. It's after the before
After
he,
the 70.
Yeah, but is it before the 70 or after?
No, it's
After-
after the 70.
after
He
the
gets
70.
apprehended for the 70.
That's right. While he's weak, and they're able to take him in, and he doesn't really resist. So the monk, one of the monks there, it's interesting. There's a monk there that's kind of talking high and mighty about the middle way. He's talking high and mighty about Buddhism. Kind of like us three pricks now sitting. He's like, oh, bro, Buddhism. But like he's a monk saying, yes, I see the bloodlust in you, but the middle way is the way to go. And then the monk immediately doubts himself.
He says it out of words. It doesn't say out of experience.
Yeah. Like he's just like,
he just memorized like the Buddhist scripture and just says,
exactly.
the middle
And the
way
monk
is-
has a moment of humility
Yeah.
where he's like, he realizes, what I respect about you, man, is that you're out there doing it. Like you're being like an idiot and getting it out of your system, but you actually go all the way. Like it's kind of, picture a person who says, let's say someone who says, the pursuit of, pursuing women relentlessly, being a pickup artist, that's so stupid, that's dumb. But let's say this person is, maybe an
virgin.
incel, maybe they're a virgin, but they have no confidence, whatever. Yeah. So they throw it away because they can't get it, But, Musashi's the kind of guy that he'll go for, well, no, he is a virgin, but, in this example, he'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to get 100 girls, get it out of my system. It's like, no, now I know I don't want to do that.
It's like Frank Yang. He's like
yeah. He knows with full confidence because he's actually done it. Like, Musashi's a guy that he's willing to live the path he has. While this old monk, he gets to a place that's pretty happy, but it's a lot of unearned wisdom. It's a lot of just like vicarious, I know that the Buddha said this and he's enlightened and he's saintly, so I'm going to follow his way. But everything Musashi learns is through direct experience. And when Musashi thinks something's bullshit, he thinks it's bullshit. And when he gets humbled and he gets sort of like put in check, he's willing to take that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that Musashi is ultimately like, even though, I find Kojiro one of the most inspiring characters as far as like the energy he has, Musashi's like approach to life, I think every human being on the planet who has any interest whatsoever in self-development, in what do we call it? Self-development, self-improvement, or just overall, just living.
The art of living.
Yeah, the art of living,
Yeah.
having a well-fulfilled, well-balanced life. Musashi is a role model.
Yes,
Musashi's
definitely.
probably the best role model you can really have. Like, he's
Yeah.
doing everything in his power to do that,
Amen.
So that's why my
Amen.
boring answer, I think Musashi's my favorite character. I
I think
he's
that's
awesome.
a good, boring answer.
There's substance behind it, and I'll mirror a lot of what you say. If I have to give a shout out to a side character, probably Takuan. I just love the wisdom, and
I knew
he's
it.
also very
Straight up.
willing to call out Musashi on his bullshit.
Yeah.
Right, just like Musashi is very willing to call out other people. I'm not sure how much I can add to what Giorgio said. If I will add anything, I just love his drive, his insatiable drive to grow, to push himself. I just admire that so much. And I think the difference between him and Kojiro, in many ways, Kojiro you could say because of his circumstances, of his, abilities, disabilities included, he came towards sword fighting. He was a natural genius. He was very strong. But I never really saw him struggle to the same extent. Now, that might be because the manga doesn't follow his exploits as much. But you see Musashi succeed, fail, succeed, fail, succeed, and fail. But what you never see is him waver.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if this manga was written from Kojiro's position, I'm sure we'll see something similar. Hey, it's not. It's written from really Musashi's point of view. And I love the perseverance. And this is something that I've thought about because, I'm a big fan of other mangas, other animes, even things like Evangelion, which I enjoy. I definitely enjoy it. The art is beautiful and the music is fantastic. I know it's a completely different experience, so maybe it's not fair for me to compare, but like I find it quite hard to relate to Shinji in many ways. And maybe that's not the point. I'm not supposed to relate to Shinji, but I find his running away from responsibility, maybe at the end it changes, but I just compare that to Musashi, and I just love what Musashi stands for.
Shinji's like a Matahachi.
Yeah, and
Bro, I was just thinking that.
yeah. Maybe it's not fair. He's a different character. Not every character needs to be like, Buddhist Hercules.
Straight up.
Musashi, Buddhist Hercules. Bro.
Not every guy has to be that, but how well he's written, how well he's developed, I just love it. I really respect him, and I think he's a model for me and other people, for everyone.
I think if we're gonna go around and say a piece on Musashi,
Everyone in the turn sucking his dick,
I didn't write anything down. It was short and sweet. No, but I think I definitely look like when I found Vagabond in like a fairly difficult time in my life for the past year, looking at Musashi was definitely like a awe-inspiring. It inspired me to change a lot. And it inspired me to take genuine control or lack of control or revel in the lack of control in what's going around me and everything like that. And I think Musashi, I think you guys really, to be honest, covered the full experience there, to be honest. But Musashi's a G.
Straight out.
TLDR, Musashi's
a G. He's a homie, man.
Buddhist Hercules, man.
Buddhist Hercules. I like that. That's the best. That's the best one. Buddhist
That's
Hercules,
great, man.
Hey, can I ask you? So, there's a, surprise, surprise, making another reference to Buddhism. There's a quote in Buddhism, or I think a koan, which says, if you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha.
Yeah.
And the idea is, obviously, don't physically hurt anyone, but kill the image of Buddha.
Yes.
Basically, if you externalize Buddha, if you think Buddhahood is something that he has or she has, something outside you, it's very hard to reach it because you think it, it's actually killing the Western or the Abrahamic idea of externalizing
conquest.
Externalizing.
The idea not enough and
conquest the heathens and then turn them into Christians, etc., or Muslims, whatever it is, etc., etc. But do you think, and I'm really just speaking off the cuff, but do you think it's important for us to kill Musashi, to kill his image? Is it important to we respect all this stuff, and I hella respect him. I love him as a character, everything he stands for, but I could say that about the Buddha as well. I
feel as if it's it depends where you're at, to be honest. If there's a way to skillfully integrate the character of Musashi into your life, and where you understand the nuance of what a character means. But actually, in the manga itself, there's this moment just before Musashi goes to challenge the 70. He's up in the tree just watching the situation unfold, and then he's having a moment of reflection on his life, completely unrelated to what's going around him in that moment, and he's thinking about his recent run-in with Matahachi again, where Matahachi was essentially doing that, externalizing Musashi, saying, "Oh, you're Musashi, you always win, you're always the best. My life is ruined. I'm a nobody and this and that." And he's thinking about that, and he's also at the same time thinking about Otsu and how in love he is with Otsu. But he's never. That was the first time he saw Matahachi in years, and he's only ran into Otsu at that point in the story maybe twice or I think even once. I think just once actually.
It was with the Yagu, right?
Yeah, with the Yagi. That was it. And then
No, it was
once
twice
they make
because
they make eye
saw her
contact at the
and then Shichiro, yeah.
and what happens is he says this line just before he jumps down and embraces the action. He's just like he's like all this character, like he was talking to Matahachi, but also being like aware in himself. It's like Matahachi's made a character of me called Musashi that's all in his head. Like, you know, it's just like, and he says the same way that I've made this character that I'm in love with called Otsu. It's like Matahachi's made this character called Musashi that he loves to hate. And then I've created Otsu in my head.
Does he say that?
Or something along the lines of
Really?
that.
I don't remember that.
And then he's like, just like I've created of Otsu that I love or something. And then he says, that's all within me. That's all within you, you know. And then he just drops out of the tree and it continues. But like, I remember seeing that and I saw it again today recently when I went over it. I'm like, holy fuck, that's such a big thing. And I feel like that's what it means to kill the Buddha. It's just like, you know, you externalize this image and then you just let yourself experience your own externalization, which on one hand you create unconsciously, and then on the other hand you experience consciously, and then you're forever stuck in this dualistic dynamic of between something's outside of me that I have to get. You assume that your ego's, you know, the island of yourself, you know what I mean? And I think Musashi makes a very clear point in, like, you know, how you should treat Musashi in that moment. It's just like this idea of just like Musashi's a character that you've chosen to love and you've created in your head, and you know that's ultimately you. What is right? I feel like what he's pointing to on a phenomenological scale is just like you've contributed in creating Musashi in your just pure experience of him. You know what I mean? And understand that your cognition to produce something like that means you're capable of experiencing that. If you can create it, you can experience it. It's like the dynamic of experience, you know. I feel like that's where he addresses that really. But apart from that, Musashi's a sick cunt. You know, like outside of me, like beyond Musashi. You know?
Yeah, look, I think that's
if I could be anyone, I'd be Musashi. You know what I mean?
It's a really well-established take. And look, to answer Stanley's question, should we kill Musashi? I'm gonna say, shut the fuck up, Stanley. Musashi's the best. I love him. You talk shit about it again, I'm gonna come to your house. I'm gonna send mail
Show you
bombs.
Musashi. I own a katana.
No, look, in all seriousness, you know what? Look, I like the idea, and you know, but I think in this case, in order to kill Musashi, you have to hug Matahachi, because I
That's a
think
good
you
one.
can't see the characters as separate from each other.
Spicy.
Yeah.
At least in that idea, because the ultimate exemplar of self-improvement goodness is, you know, contrasted with Matahachi, who constantly dreams about reinventing himself.
Yeah.
He steals Kojiro's name, steals other people's identities. He pretends to be something he's not. He convinces himself of egoic lies. Like, while Musashi breaks himself down and challenges himself, not just physically, but he's, you know, like we said, he's challenging his sort of his ego and his self-image, and he's constantly trying to be better. Matahachi's constantly trying to erase his idea of himself. And he constantly has this sort of, like, I guess you could say, this sort of impotent dream of overcoming Musashi that he never makes any genuine steps towards. He just likes the idea of having that dream. He likes the idea of being
in a sense, he's doing what he loves.
Mm.
He loves having ideas.
I think, yeah, he's a frustrating character, and he's hard to like. Like, you wanna knock the guy's lights out when you read about him, man. Like, every time there be a Matahachi story, I'd be cringing. Like, I rarely cringe. I'm pretty cringe proof. I usually got a stony face. No, fair enough. But I'm reading
like,
Matahachi. I'm like, oh god.
Bro, the times in the manga.
Oh god, it's hard.
Times in the manga where like Musashi's doing some hectic shit, then it cuts to Matahachi. On one hand, I'm like, this is very good storytelling. I like how he does that. On the other hand, I'm like, for fuck's sake. I'm like, bro, I don't want to hear. I don't want to fucking go through like 10 more chapters of just being like, oh man. But you know what's funny though? On the Facebook page. Because I'm going to post this podcast on the fucking Facebook page.
Oh, they're going to love it.
They're gonna, you know, I hope you're listening and you're from there and you get this far. But like, I remember seeing this picture on that Facebook page, the Vagabond drift posting Facebook page.
Oh, you damn right.
Where it's just like, it said the virgin Musashi and the Chad Matahachi. And it just like goes around Japan, fucks women, gets drunk all the time. Fucking cares about has good family values, cares about his parents. And this Musashi's like swinging a sword. It's just a heat haze. I'm like, bro, this is hilarious.
Yeah, straight up.
I'm like, that's genius. That's genius.
Oh man, but look, it's just so funny. In all seriousness about Matahachi, like the whole hug Matahachi thing, like, yeah, he's cringe. trust me, I cringe hard when I read it. But like in order to appreciate Musashi, you can't just be like fanboying or fangirling about how cool Musashi is.
Yeah.
You have to be like, dude, you gotta just be taking him as a character, just see him for what he is.
Game of Sensations, Musashi.
Both start with M.
Yeah, exactly.
Both men, both Japanese.
You obsess about Musashi, you become Marahachi.
Yeah.
You obsess on be like Musashi, then you become him. But in some ways, you say, okay, if you are a bit of a Marahachi in your own life in any capacity, the first step comes from accepting you're a Marahachi.
Words of Taekwondo, accept where you are. Your work starts there.
Exactly. The journey of 1,000. This is Lao Tzu, I believe, Chinese fact checker. The journey of 1,000 steps.
By the way,
begins with one
Stanley
step, right?
here,
By the way, the audience they were just pointing towards me.
Oh yeah.
Eastern
That's what,
correspondent.
they don't know what we look like. Yeah, Nick and I are both like very Greek, right? And Stanley's
too.
very Oh,
Like,
yeah,
no,
we're all very
Stanley's
Greek.
I
Greek.
jumped
By
in. Honorable Greek.
We played a game of backgammon with him. You know, he had a very small coffee. It was a whole ritual.
The way I cognitivise
Sword and gun on the table.
the way that I cognitivise Stanley is like how like the Rome the Chinese looked at Rome and Rome looked at Chinese, like great empire.
Yeah.
In the East. And then, like,
Yeah,
the
big
Chinese,
boy.
The Chinese are like great empire in the West.
Straight up.
It's like they're too far away from each other to have any real animosity. Like they just accept good stuff happens and maybe.
As long as you don't piss on my fire hydrant, I ain't gonna piss on yours, man. You do your thing, man. You stay on your side, I'll stay on our side.
Until the Chinese bought the port of Piraeus in Greece.
Yeah.
Oh, we bring that up.
All right, political tension for the rest of the podcast. Let's go, boys.
Actually,
No, the greatest union, sorry to interject, the greatest union between West and East was the following story I will tell. Did you know that the East didn't really, like, they never got into carving, like, stone and, like, marble, obviously.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, of course you do. They never got into carving as much as they did to just, like, you know, painting and all that kind of stuff. They never got into carving statues until Alexander the Great came. And, like, with him, he obviously, within his walking city of conquering Greek people, you know, they had, like, stone carvers.
Specific mention, Greek people. Not just people, Greek
Persians.
people.
And, sorry, it's also, by that point, it was Persians. It was, and they had stonemasons, and that's when they started getting into carving Buddha out of stone. And one of the first carvings of Buddha that exist, it's Greco in design, like in the style. It's very Greek, right? And they have Hercules guarding Buddha. And I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, I'm friends with Stanley. I look at this, I'm like, Stanley's friends with me and I'm friends with Stanley. Like, that is the ultimate union between my book.
by the way, both
awesome.
Nicholas and Giorgio are firm believers that Alexander the Great was Greek. Just
Yeah, we believe in facts.
I don't
Macedonia.
In the words of Carl Jung, when someone questioned him if he believes in God, he says, "I don't believe, I know."
Straight up.
I don't believe, Alexander. Oh, I believe. I have faith. I told myself story. No, it's for me. It's a fact. So if you are Macedonian, listen to this. At me. At me. Nah, look, no hate. You're our brothers from the north, right? Yeah.
To touch back on that quote, one footstep or a step starts a journey of 1,000 miles or something. I'm pretty sure that's Confucius.
Oh, okay.
Do you retract that?
Hey, I'm not going to fight the Chinese guy in the room right now. If he says Confucius, Confucius, man. All right, so you tell me that's Angulimala, whatever.
Just pure shit talk.
You tell me that's Herodotus, bro. I'll take it.
What's the Confucius adaptation of Vagabond? What would that look like?
Oh, Shichiro.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's the hero.
No, but
He's the hero of
if it was
Vagabond.
rewritten, like Musashi forgives his father and realizes he's in the wrong for not being in the school.
Yeah. A little piety, baby.
And he switches this sword for like a lot of like priest robes, and he just does priest rituals everywhere.
Does he also open up like a business?
As a stakeholder of society. Yeah, that's the Confucian outlook on this.
All right, sick. Well, do we have anything else to really cover with
I've got one more thing, but
Yes, go for it,
But
go
no, Giorgio, I'm gonna throw the ball to you. Do you have something you want to throw up?
Actually, yeah, I just wanted to finish. Yeah, say a little more about the embracing Matahachi thing.
Yes.
There's still one more aspect of that I wanted to cover, is that I think, yeah, look, recognizing that Matahachi is presented as an ultimate symbol of human weakness. The greatness of the storytelling is that he is cringe, and then you have to not cringe at him, because if you hate or resent the Matahachi in yourself, you can never have the openness that Musashi needs to, Musashi can't hate himself in order to change. He simply connects to his love for self-development, his natural desire to self-cultivate. He sees a flaw, and he doesn't sit there saying, no, I'm flawed, I'm wrong. He's like, okay, no, I'm open to learning the right way. And I think in some sense, at least in this meta-narrative of seeing this paragon of self-improvement in, in Musashi, I think Matahachi provides just this perfect foil to like, look, if you're in a neurotic bloody stew of self-resentment.
Start again.
yeah, you gotta know how to start again, man.
Smile and start again.
Smile and start again. And you know what? Matahachi, hugging Matahachi is what that is to me. That's how I see that.
Yeah, beautiful. And that was a bit of Goenko, talking about like, when you're meditating and you're just crowded, you can't stop thinking or something's bothering you. Just like, you're not gonna sitting there and hating, and this goes for anything, just meditating. Meditating is like the grand activity of life, but just like metaphorically, just like you're doing anything in life, everything's difficult at first. That's a direct quote from Musashi from the Book of Five Rings. Everything's difficult at first, no matter what you do. And it's like the idea of you're doing something, you're fucking up, sitting there and hating yourself, being like, oh, I wish I was that. I wish I was this. I wish I was that. I wish I was this.
Yeah.
I don't like this feeling. Smile. Start again. Don't be depressed. Don't be fearful. Don't be scared. Don't be like hateful. Don't be spiteful. Just smile and start again.
There's a lot of
that's cool
narcissism in self-hate.
Yeah.
Because there's an idea of where you should be.
Yes.
And I should be perfect. I should be beautiful. I should be whatever. And
it's delusional of that.
It's also very self. What's the right word? Centric. It's very egocentric. I should be. I should be. I should be. So yeah, there is a lot of narcissism in self-hate.
Dude, I feel like quick Vipassana aside, so this is all going to be sent to the Vipassana podcast as well. But the idea is that I met this dude there, right? This is a fucking big tangent from Vagabond, but like slightly related. I met this dude there. He was the chairman of Are You Okay? Right?
Oh,
and he was
really?
Dude. And he was, before he was that, he was some Indian dude, like very implicated in the corporate world, like the high level corporate world. I'm talking about like people, like rubbing shoulders with people who make millions, and he was telling me this story on the last night when we were speaking. And he's like, I was in Texas for some sort of meeting or something like that, like some organization with owners of businesses. Yeah, with fat cats discussing something. I think it was for mental health. I don't know. Don't quote me. If he's listening, I don't know. Something you said like about being in Texas for this big thing where businessmen meet. And he met this dude there, and he's just like, this dude that he met was like, oh man, I'm so depressed. I'm so like upset and angry at myself. He's like, and he asked like, oh, why? And he's like, I make $9 million a year. And everyone else here, that guy there, he makes 80 million. That guy here there, he makes 100 million. That guy there, he makes 60 million. And it's just like, I'm just so depressed. I'm so poor. And then when he told me this, I started laughing my ass off. I'm like, bro, if I had 500 grand to my name, not over a year, just over fucking 10 years, I'd be like, oh, like, whoa.
Yeah. Hey, Mom, I've made it.
Yeah, And then I'm just like, dude, I'm like, yeah. Like being at the head of like a business, like a corporate level business like that, and like the self-centeredness like that's involved is like immediately precedes the negativity of like where you should be by looking at what you have and just saying like nah, I shouldn't be. I know where I'm meant to be, and this isn't it. It has to be there. And so that's like the Matahachi, you know what I mean? It's like Matahachi is completely ignorant of like the path that he walked. His revelation later on in the arc where he's like, dude, you don't realize Matahachi. When you look outside of just the ego, the failures of Matahachi, that's so in your face because of Matahachi. But if you look at his story objectively, not through his own cognition or his own self-cognition, you see this guy's traveled all over Japan, which at the time is unheard of. you know, on a pilgrimage to any extent.
As a small town villager,
As a small town
like,
villager, you know, he's gone
Yeah.
and seen so much, rubbed shoulders against so many people, has so many stories to tell, so many things that he's seen would be unheard of at the time like that. He would have just been dead in a war in his village, you know, but he didn't. And just like, look at the path that you've traveled, which is
He's
great
just as much
revelation.
of a vagabond as
Yeah,
Musashi.
exactly.
Like, the title Vagabond
Exactly.
can equally be applied to Musashi, Matahachi, and Kojiro.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're all vagabonds.
They're
you know?
all vagabonds. and
Otsu.
Otsu too, yeah, 100%.
She's a vagababe, Otsu.
She's a vagababe, yeah, exactly. Man. But dude, yeah, I reckon, yeah, it's the
And the dealing with the Matahachi side is something that I feel I've struggled with for a while. I would say that
Same.
it's
Oh, big
something
time
that
for you too, yeah.
I've resented. And it's not, you know what's ironic? I often resent and dislike Matahachi in other people. And that undoubtedly, obviously, is a self-projection of myself. I would say generally, like, I don't have, you know, this is probably, I don't know. People can disagree with this and I'm okay with that. I think I don't have that much Matahachi traits in me, but I think the fact that I resent it so much in other people means that I'm scared of slipping into that archetype.
yeah.
I feel similarly, yeah.
So even if I
think so.
don't have it
too.
in me right now, there is a fear that if I let go, I don't, you know, I'm not disciplined. And this is a word that I love, but it's a double-edged sword. You know, we're talking about Mahayana and the looseness, the freedom of that thinking. I am scared of slipping into the Matahachi state. And that's when I see it in other people, I recoil. Because I'm scared that I will become that and that I will stray from the path of Musashi, which does mean, and Giorgio talked about this previously, it does mean I am, I guess you could say, less empathetic in certain respects. I'm also less open to other weakness. And it means that, like, if you build your CPU or your system through, you know, discipline and Musashi and, you know, striving, and you almost use resentment or shame
As a fuel.
of a fuel, it will get you places. The car will run, but you also inbuild like impurities and fear and disgust into your
Dude,
CPU.
I have, I just
It's like low-grade petrol. in
Yes,
the car.
it is
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
great metaphor.
to interject there, dude. I reckon, yeah. As soon as you start operating, in my opinion, if you start operating in the world of anti-ideals, you've now instantiated a place in your psyche where you've made a no-go zone. Like, you're not
Yeah.
allowed to ever be there. And that's like that condition of not ever allowing to be there, you know, you just have to live your life hoping by chance of the impermanent nature of the world, you just don't end up landing there for whatever reason. You know what I mean? The way I sort of confronted my own Matahachi sort of nature is just like coming back down to anicca. Just like if it comes,
Wait, I don't understand this
just
reference.
impermanence. Just
Oh,
like, just
what's the word?
Anicca.
Anicca. Is
Anicca.
that
Pali
is
for
that Pali?
impermanence, yeah.
All right.
And it's like,
One of the 3 marks of existence in Buddhism.
and it's like, okay, you find yourself within this territory. Know that this is just as valid in terms of just a form of expression of a life, not like valid as in regards to any means of doing something, but like this, it's just as subject to the laws of being in the good place as well. So that will pass too. And like the number one attitude that you have in that is equanimity. A really important sort of arc I had during Vipassana was, am I Matahachi, am I being Matahachi, am I being Musashi, am I being... And then I realized, like, dude, this is just a story in a manga. Why am I living through this cognition? And I'm like, this is the same as any other story.
And
You know
that's
I
what
mean?
Matahachi does. He actually lives his life through the lens of Musashi.
Yeah.
Everything he
Yeah.
does is compared to Musashi.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, well, dude, you can live your life through the lens of anyone or anything or any school of practice and thought and still be a victim. You know what I mean?
It doesn't matter how saintly the person you're living up to is. You know, I mean, that happens all the time with people who, you know, how can we see in certain cases where it's like, people misappropriate these saintly religious figures.
Judas is Matahachi.
Dude, straight
Christ
up.
is
Straight up.
Musashi, you know? Like, that's a very, you know, interesting example.
For sure, man. For sure.
Can I just add one more thing before we end it? Unless anyone wants to.
I'm good.
Like, Nicholas touched upon this before, that Vagabond comes from a adaptation of the Musashi myth, and in many ways it is a myth.
Yeah.
And that story was written, I think, in the 1950s by someone trying to unify and create a single understanding of Musashi, and he wrote it into a novel. And Vagabond is a visual adaptation of that. And I was talking to a student about this recently because I'm the biggest preacher of Vagabond, and I just said, fight a good fight.
Get the kids while they're young.
And I just said that it honestly doesn't matter if Musashi in real life was what Musashi is like in Vagabond, because in real life, like I've read some stuff, he does some pretty, I guess, quote unquote shady and anti-Bushido stuff. For example, you could say what Nick said, aligning the sun to hit the other person's eye, it's quote unquote not a fair fight. Or I've heard something else that he does, which I think is true. He comes late to like a battle, which I think is what Den Shichiro is based off. Like he actually comes late in the manga, but in real life he came late in order to make Den Shichiro like very angry, and then Den Shichiro would just attack out of spite, and then it would kill him. So, who really knows the myth, or who can really separate the myth and the reality from this character? It's been too long. He's a national symbol of strength. Like there's too much mythos around this. But regardless of whether it's true or not, like I think he is a very powerful archetype. And I really don't care in real life if he actually beat Kojiro with a paddle, or if he didn't, or if he attacked Kojiro first, or Kojiro attacked him first. To me, I see him as such a powerful symbol of a man or a person with the wisdom to adapt, the wisdom to be humble, and the wisdom to push the boundaries. And for that reason, I don't really care.
Yeah, fully.
Totally on board, yeah.
Totally on board, man. Totally on board. See, I don't know. I guess the way I look at it is like the nature of stories, like full stop. It's just like, did Troy happen? Did Troy didn't happen? It doesn't matter. Like Troy, the Iliad was beautiful. I still haven't read it.
But World of the Streets is pretty damn good,
but like,
long live Greece.
Zito,
Zenya.
But yeah, no, like the idea of like, dude, these are stories that are like the fundamental, like the most important part is like these stories make you feel something.
Absolutely.
And like that's the thing. Like I love the movie Blade Runner. Like I know that doesn't, you know what I mean? But like it doesn't matter. It's how that makes you feel and how that gives you. See, the way I tend to look at it most of the time, consciously or unconsciously, is like, in what way is this story a medium that allows me to access parts of myself? That appreciate it in any kind of way, make me feel emotions in any sort of way. Like stories are a medium to yourself at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Or to the world, or in the bigger picture, the Buddha mind, to yourself, and that's what I appreciate. Like the history adds that other added element, of course, but like, I love the manga Vagabond, that's where I'm. Like I said, I got Vagabond tattooed on me. I don't have Musashi tattooed on me. That's like a thing. Yeah, like the podcast that we did on Ziz. You know what I mean? It's just like at this point, it like transcends whether or not, like we were saying, if Ziz was like a good person or a bad person or just a play. It doesn't matter almost. It's just like what he is now is what's currently the reality.
For sure, man. 100%,
in our face,
100%.
and that's what's happening, and like how that makes you feel. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, obviously it pays. It works out better if you know like the full scope of the situation. You shouldn't be walking around and you shouldn't be studying history quoting Vagabond. It's like, but in the book,
but Otsu was really hot.
It's just like, it's a story. It's a fucking good story, and like that's the bottom line, and I love it. I love it. If I could be anyone, I'd be a Vagabond.
Sadhu.
Is this the point in the podcast where we start Mongolian throat singing.
By the way, I knew they were going to start doing it. As soon as it was like a trigger word.
I said I wouldn't let Stanley baited me, and I got this far, but
It's like a
you got me, you slippery fella.
All right. So, thank you for listening to our huge. I think this is the longest podcast we've done. It's 2.5 hours almost.
Hot damn.
Yeah, dude, we have
Hey,
a lot to say.
hey.
By the way, we've met up many a times before. After we've all individually finished Vagabond, but we've always reserved ourselves from speaking about it until now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
we always,
oh, man,
we always
this is
had
actually
like
that's
passing.
true.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
always had like passing like appreciations, like they made that. Yeah, that's cool. That's bad. But like
O2's really hot.
Yeah, O2's, bro.
We just kept it at that level,
But like we've all like said, we gotta shut the fuck up and not talk about it until we're here,
Yeah.
until we can turn it at least into a podcast.
There was some times where we succeeded. Sometimes we failed.
exactly.
We've had a few hour-long conversations, but
Yeah.
we never broke the 2.5 hour mark.
I don't think I've had like much discussion. I've had it with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't
We've been
think I've-
disciplined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by we,
As in, I'm
it's
pointing to Stanley when I say that.
Yeah,
Nick and I
yeah.
haven't been disciplined on that.
But yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this.
Yes, sir.
I know
yeah.
maybe most of the viewers, my 15 subscribers, and or most like close friends that would probably watch maybe 15 minutes of these. I know like you guys have just heard me talk about Vagabond. I don't expect anyone to really know what
This was for the
Vagabond
drift posters, bro.
Yeah,
This is for
Vagabond drift posting.
Yeah,
it's
this
for
is,
you,
this
man.
is mostly for the drift posting crew and like just like people who are just like looking up Vagabond like after they finished reading it, because I found there was not enough not enough. There was some, but like not enough like in-depth deep dive Vagabond like stuff.
it's a
Those
lot less than Berserk.
are way less than Berserk. There's more for Evangelion. There's more for Kira. But like not much. I didn't see much for Vagabond.
Yeah,
apart
where are
from,
the
like,
British guys doing the video essays, huh? What's going on with those? In poor form,
Yeah, exactly. Poor form. But maybe this tickled that. You'll see this on Stanley's. If you're listening to this from Stanley's podcast,
Safety last.
Safety Last, you hear Gio's voice at the end, a beautiful voice. Like, if you're listening from Legitimate Psychiatric Emergency, we out here. Hope
Cool.
you guys enjoyed Buddhism, Vagabond, and etc.
Yeah.
Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Stay frosty.
Stay frosty.
Yeah.